Chapter 4686. If he wanted to warm up the relationship between the two of them, simply being alone was not enough. Perhaps they would not be able to break through this layer of window paper until the end of the trial. The best way was to give them an opportunity, and right now, it was a heaven-sent opportunity. The trick of a hero saving the beauty had been used too many times in the secular world. In order to win the beauty's heart, those playboys had to create their own opportunities even if they didn't have the opportunity. They asked people to pretend to be hooligans to set off their glorious image. This trick was so common that it was not new at all. If he didn't know Chi Wenhan's character, Lin Yi even couldn't help but wonder if these three guys were actors he deliberately hired with spiritual jades. After all, the timing of their appearance was simply perfect. Boy, are you stupid? If you weren't the young master of South Continent's Equal Heaven Escort Agency, Master Een would have killed you long ago. How dare you be so stubborn in front of us? With such a poor strength, how can you be a hero? The other man with the ugly head and rat eyes sneered. That's right, you dare to be a hero in front of us. How many brains do you have? Or do you have no brains at all? Don't you look at the comparison of strength? You are just at the peak of the early stage of nascent soul realm and one at the early stage of nascent soul realm, and you want to fight against our Master Een. I'm surprised. Who gave you the courage and courage? The previous man kept talking and ridiculed them. I say, haven't you figured out the situation yet? Our Master Een is the core disciple of Snow Sword sect in the Middle Island, a real master at the peak of nascent soul realm. Do you understand what this means? This means that now in this West Island trial, our young Master Een is the strongest one. Now I don't have to waste my breath on what to do, right? The man with the ugly head and rat-like eyes had a complacent expression on his face. Snow Sword sect? Lin Yi, who was walking over slowly, was stunned when he heard this word. He secretly thought that things in this world were really coincidental. Fortunately, this guy was not Wei Shinjin. Otherwise, today's thing would be really interesting. Well, have you thought about it? The man in the middle of the three, who was called Master Een, said. At first glance, this man looked a bit like a master. He was also handsome, but there was always a bit of evil in his eyes. He always gave people a feeling that he was not above board. Humph, do I even need to think about this? I'll say it again, if you dare to touch a hair on Lualua's head, I won't rest until you die today. Chi Wenhan narrowed his eyes and stared at young Master Een. This person was the biggest threat. After all, he was an expert at the peak of the nascent soul realm. Just him alone was not something that he and Xia Luoluo could deal with. TSK, it sounds like you have some backbone. It's a pity that his brain isn't that good. Young Master Een didn't even look at Chi Wenhan as he stared unscrupulously at Xia Luoluo. He was a veteran who had seen countless women. Naturally, he could tell that Xia Luoluo's current appearance was a disguise. Just from her temperament, he could tell that this woman was definitely a rare beauty. Xia Luoluo was scared by his stare, and she quickly hid behind Chi Wenhan. Although she was stronger than Chi Wenhan, women were always naturally weaker at this time. Fortunately, Chi Wenhan's performance gave her some comfort. Thanks to these three people, she felt a little hazy in her heart. It was starting to sprout. Young Master Een also poked his head out and looked greedily at the hiding Xia Luoluo. He smacked his lips as if he was tasting a rare toy. He said to the unyielding Chi Wenhan, "Brat, give this girl to me. At most, I'll just play with her. I won't kill her. This way, it'll be good for you, me, and her. Otherwise, she can only be buried with your boring man's pride. Think carefully about which is more important." Chi Wenhan was originally very resolute, but after hearing these words, his heart subconsciously wavered. He knew that with his strength, he couldn't protect Xia Luoluo. It didn't matter if he died here, but if he dragged Xia Luoluo to die with him, that wouldn't be justifiable. However, Chi Wenhan turned his head and looked at Xia Luoluo. After understanding the meaning of the other's gaze, his wavering immediately disappeared. Xia Luoluo had expressed it very clearly. She would rather die than be given to this bastard. Since that was the case, what was there to hesitate about? I've thought it through very clearly. If you want to touch even a strand of my hair, you'll have to do it over my dead body. Qi Wenhan paused, and suddenly, his blood surged as he roared, "Come!" This sound was like a clap of thunder that came out of nowhere. Even the clouds in the sky were shaken a bit. As for the three people who were close to Qi Pai, they were even more shocked. Each of their expressions changed greatly, and they took several steps back. Xia Luoluo's gaze stared straight at Qi Wenhan from behind. Her eyes flickered with a peculiar light. She was also shocked, but she was pleasantly surprised. An intense warmth immediately surged from the bottom of her heart. At this moment, the gaze she looked at Qi Wenhan with became even more tender and sweet. She didn't have this kind of opportunity in the past, so even if she had a good impression of Qi Wenhan, it was only a good impression. She wasn't sure that this was the man she could entrust her life to. But now, she was sure that although the situation was dangerous, there was a lover who was willing to die for her. What else could she ask for in this life? Qi Wenhan didn't notice Xia Luoluo's tender and sweet gaze behind him. He only stared at the three people in front of him. In particular, he stared at young Master Yin. Looking at their expressions, he knew that these people were already angry out of humiliation. Next, there would be a bloody battle to the death. He probably wouldn't survive today, but no matter what, he had to at least give Xia Luoluo a chance to escape. No matter what, he couldn't let her fall into the hands of these beasts. "Oh, I didn't expect you to be such a tough guy. I really admire you a little now." After being shocked, young Master Yin didn't immediately launch an attack like Qi Wenhan had imagined. Instead, he still looked like a cat playing with a mouse. However, he didn't want Qi Wenhan to take the initiative to retreat like before. He looked at Qi Wenhan as if he was looking at a dead man. He admired tough guys, but if it was a tough guy who went against him, it was better to kill him. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble in the future. He's indeed a tough guy. Unfortunately, tough guys don't have a good ending, especially tough guys who go against our young Master Yin. The ugly guy echoed with a laugh. That's right. Our young Master Yin is being merciful and wants to spare your life, but you don't even appreciate it. There are so many brainless idiots in this world, especially this kind. They're so stupid that they want to cry. The other person also mocked. Chapter 4687. Young Master Yin seemed to enjoy the feeling of a cat playing with a mouse. Holding his arms and pinching his chin, he said, "Tut tut, I have to say that this girl is really the best. Even if she disguises herself, she can't hide her natural beauty. I'm so lucky." Speaking of this, the opportunity to come to West Island should have belonged to Wei Shenjin, the big idiot, but that idiot had to wander around Tiandan Pavilion every day. What a fucking idiot. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have met such a wonderful girl. It's really God's will, ha 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 ha. That's right, young Master Yin. Wei Shenjin is just at the early stage of Yuanying realm. He was valued by the senior management of the sect only because he got acquainted with the will of heaven. How dare he compare with our young Master Yin? The ugly guy flattered. Yes, let's take this opportunity to win glory for Middle Island. As long as young Master Yin wins the Princess of West Island, you will have a meteoric rise. Moreover, Deputy Island Owner Chu will also treat us differently. That bullshit Wei Shenjin doesn't even deserve to carry shoes for our young Master Yin. The other guy also flattered, unwilling to be left behind. You two have hit the nail on the head. If I become rich this time, I won't forget your benefits. Young Master Yin laughed happily. Although he was very powerful, he didn't have any strong backing in the school. So, he hadn't been very successful. Especially in the past 2 years, even Wei Shenjin had become a core disciple of the school. This was something that made him unhappy no matter how he looked at it. This time, He could use this rare opportunity to make a name for himself in one fell swoop. At that time, he would like to see how those snobbish people of the Snow Sword School would react. Of course, even if he, young Master Een, was not successful in the Snow Sword School, he was still a high and mighty core disciple. As for the bullshit South Continent escort agency behind Qi Wenhan, he did not care about it at all. It was just a small, unranked force. Perhaps there were people in the South Continent Sea who would take it seriously, but how could it compare to a large sect like the Middle Island? There was no comparison between them at all, so even if he killed Qi Wenhan here, there wouldn't be any repercussions. Putting aside the fact that he could kill people to silence them, even if the news leaked out, would the damn South State Escort Agency dare to go to Middle Island to seek revenge? Young Master Een said as he walked towards Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo. There was a lascivious smile on his face. In his eyes, there was only a beauty in disguise. As for the rotten egg in front of him, he could casually squash it to death with one hand. He didn't even bother to look at it. Qi Wenhan gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to attack recklessly, Xia Luoluo suddenly rushed out from behind and shielded him behind her. She gritted her teeth at the approaching young Master Een and said, "If you dare to do anything to me, I'd rather die than live in disgrace." Surprised, Qi Wenhan looked at Xia Luoluo's back, and his eyes couldn't help but redden. He didn't even have time to feel touched, and hurriedly rushed to protect her behind him, yelling, "If you have any problems, come at me." Ha ha ha, what a good saying. Interesting, this is too interesting. I like to break up lovers, it's only satisfying this way. Young Master Een sneered unscrupulously. A mere peak-early nascent soul cultivator has the nerve to say this to me? You'd rather die than live in disgrace? What a big joke. I think it should be called Die in Disgrace. I'll be fine even if you're broken. After saying that, young Master Yin's aura of a perfected nascent soul cultivator enveloped Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo without reservation. Under the strong pressure, the two's hearts tightened at the same time. They were afraid that today was really going to be dangerous. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly interrupted. So what if you're at the peak early nascent soul? Are you looking down on me? Along with the voice, Lin Yi appeared in front of everyone with a cold expression. Hui Yidi, who was following behind him, couldn't help but feel nervous. She knew that Lin Yi's strength couldn't be measured with common sense. She also knew that this man and woman were Lin Yi's friends, so Lin Yi would definitely stand up for them. However, if it really came to this point, it wouldn't be so easy to end things, because the strength of the three opponents was really not weak. Not to mention that young Master Een in the middle was a perfected nascent soul cultivator, even the two followers next to him were perfected nascent soul cultivators. Facing this kind of strength, these two friends of Lin Yi couldn't do anything at all, and even if Lin Yi could fight opponents who were at a higher level than him, his strength was only at the peak early nascent soul stage. Could he be a match for these three people? Hui Yidi even felt that even if she joined the battle, she might not be able to gain an advantage against these three people, because at that time, not only would Lin Yi's two friends not be of help, but they would also become a burden. The consequences were really unpredictable. Qi Wenhan, who'd been prepared to die, was overjoyed when he saw Lin Yi's sudden appearance. There was finally hope for him. Oh. Here comes another weakling who isn't afraid of death. What kind of day is it today? Why do useless things dare to come and play the hero? Young Master Een glanced at Lin Yi with extreme contempt. When he saw Hui Yudi, his eyes immediately lit up. Another rare great beauty. Xia Luoluo's appearance was not very clear because of her disguise, but this Hui Yudi was different. Even if she wore a veil, it couldn't hide her heavenly beauty, especially that exquisite and curvaceous body. This was a stunning beauty that no man would be able to resist when they saw her. You're from the Snow Sword faction? Lin Yi looked at the three people and asked young Master Een, who was in the middle, with the corner of his mouth slightly raised. That's right. Young Master Een was stunned for a moment, and then he said proudly, if you know what's good for you, hurry up and scram. Don't cause trouble for your own faction. You can't afford to offend them. Is that so? Lin Yi smiled noncommittally, and instead of answering, he asked, from what you said just now, it seems like Wei Shenjin is your enemy? Oh. Young Master Yin couldn't help but be stunned again. He couldn't help but glance at Lin Yi suspiciously. Could it be that this brat knew that idiot Wei Shenjin? But no matter what, he clearly had no reason to act cowardly in front of such a nameless brat. Immediately, he raised his head proudly and said, "So what if I am? And where did you come from?" "Oh, nothing much. I'm just sorry to tell you that you can go die now." Lin Yi smiled lightly. In an instant, everyone was stunned. Chapter 4688. Among the crowd, only Qi Wenhan had a matter-of-fact expression on his face. After experiencing so many things in the past, he would never doubt Lin Yi's strength. Although the other side had a peak nascent soul stage and 2 late nascent soul stage cultivators, and the lineup looked a bit fierce, but so what? Fuck. Why am I so unlucky today? Why did I run into these idiots? Young Master Yin cursed with a grin. Immediately, his killing intent soared and he was about to attack Lin Yi. However, before he could mobilize the true qi in his body, he heard a soft dragon roar next to his ear. Immediately after, he saw a dragon-shaped killing intent penetrate his chest without any resistance. He fell to the ground in a daze, and died with his eyes wide open. Fuck. The whole scene was dead silent. This scene happened too quickly and too suddenly. Young Master Yin's 2 followers were completely dumbfounded, and they were so shocked that they could not close their mouths for a long time. Just a moment ago, they thought that this idiot who came out of nowhere was seeking his own death. His strength was not enough, but his tone was quite arrogant. They thought that young Master Yin would definitely trample him to death. In the blink of an eye, young Master Yin, a peak nascent soul stage cultivator, became a corpse. And he died so miserably and so easily. Was this guy even human? The 2 looked at Lin Yi, who was still calm and collected, and were immediately scared to the point of wetting their pants. Didn't they say that only peak nascent soul stage cultivators could enter this place? Why did such a fierce monster suddenly appear? Don't come over. We are from the Snow Sword faction. If you dare to kill us, the Snow Sword School will never let you off. The 2 of them put on a brave front. They shouted hysterically as they backed away in fear. Didn't I just confirm that you are from the Snow Sword faction? You've already killed him, so why are you still talking to me about this? Lin Yi smiled faintly and glanced at the 2 of them indifferently. Do you know what I would do if I were you? What? The 2 of them looked at each other and answered subconsciously with fear. Turn around and run. At this time, you still dare to talk nonsense here, then go die with him. At the same time Lin Yi's voice fell. The silhouette suddenly disappeared into thin air. An instant later, it suddenly appeared on top of the 2 people's heads. With a kick from each person, the 2 people were kicked into the ground. 2 more corpses died with their eyes wide open. Huiyuti stared blankly at the scene in front of her. She rubbed her eyes with all her might, afraid that this was an illusion. A master of the Great Yuanying stage and 2 masters of the Late Yuanying stage were so easily killed by Lin Yi. From beginning to end, there was no resistance at all. Was this guy really at the peak of the early Yuanying stage? Are you sure he's not at the peak of Mysterious Ascension early stage? He shook his head speechlessly. Huiyuti looked at Lin Yi again with an inexplicable look in her eyes. Although Lin Yi had shown great strength along the way, and could even kill the dummy vine in a second, but to be honest, in Huiyuti's opinion, no matter how strong Lin Yi was, he was at most similar to her. No matter how strong a master of the early Yuanying stage was, it was impossible to be stronger than a master of the Great Yuanying stage. This was common sense. As for why Lin Yi could kill the dummy vine in a second, the explanation was very simple. Plants were originally extremely afraid of fire, and it was also in this dry and hot environment. His fire attribute martial skill was bound to be twice the result with half the effort in this kind of situation. Huiyuti felt that if she was also a fire attribute master, dealing with the dummy vine would definitely not be a problem. But now, they could only watch as Lin Yi killed the three of them with ease. Huiyuti finally understood that her previous thinking was really too wrong. A person like Lin Yi was simply above the existence of common sense. A super genius who could surpass several realms and defeat an enemy of a higher level was originally just a legend. Even in the East Continent Academy, where geniuses gathered, it was impossible to find such a person. But now, this legend was standing right in front of her. Her heart was full of perilous waves. Huiyuti finally realized why Lin Yi had been so indifferent along the way when he was following Ren Zhongyuan and the others. It turned out that this guy killed a master of the great Yuanying stage like it was child's play. Ren Zhongyuan and the others still had the attitude of a high and mighty master, but in fact, they were simply being watched by others. What kind of ruthless person was this? Huiyuti stared blankly at Lin Yi, and her mind couldn't help but start to let her imagination run wild. I don't know if this guy will kill me at the sight of the Thunder Mystic Vine when he really finds it. That way, he doesn't even need to share 20% and can directly swallow it all for himself. Huiyuti was dumbfounded. At this moment, Xia Luoluo, who was being protected by Qi Wenhan, also widened her eyes. She looked at the calm Lin Yi with a face full of astonishment. In fact, the matter of Lin Yi had long been a hot topic in the South Continent Sea, and Qi Wenhan had mentioned it to her many times. But hearing it from others was one thing, and seeing it with her own eyes was another. Previously, even if Xia Luoluo was beaten to death, she would never have imagined that the honorary escort chief that Qi Wenhan spoke of would be so terrifyingly powerful. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency actually had such a powerful backer. A master at the peak of the early Yuanying stage was nothing, but a master at the peak of the early Yuanying stage who could instantly kill a master of the great Yuanying stage was a completely different concept. Even if she used her toes to think, as long as this person didn't die prematurely, he would definitely grow to become a top existence in the 5 great heavenly islands in the future. There was no doubt about this. Xia Luoluo couldn't help but remind herself that when she returned this time, she would have to properly explain today's matter to her father. Originally, she was a little afraid that her father wouldn't agree to the relationship between her and Qi Wenhan. But now, after seeing Lin Yi's shocking performance, she suddenly didn't have the slightest bit of worry. As the helmsman of the treasured ship transportation company, her father's foresight was naturally not inferior to hers. As the saying goes, when a man achieves the Tao, his chickens and dogs also rise to the heavens. Qi Wenhan's background and strength weren't weak, and now he had a powerful external aid like Lin Yi, who could casually give him a nascent soul golden pill. His strength was even more frightening. No one would refuse such a person, let alone a businessman with a unique foresight like her father. Looks like Brother Ling owed me a lot of things in your previous life. In this life, you've actually come to help me repay my debt. Qi Wenhan laughed heartily as he stepped forward and gave Lin Yi a bear hug. Lin Yi's awesomeness had long been deeply ingrained in his heart. Even the West Mountain Old Sect master of the evil cultivation period couldn't do anything to this brother of his, let alone a mere master of the great Yuanying stage. Chapter 4689. Although he had lowered his voice, he did not deliberately isolate it. When these words reached Xia Luoluo's ears, she immediately blushed. Even Qi Wenhan, a forthright man, unconsciously became a little bashful. Their eyes met, but they could not help but look at each other. This feeling of being a thief really made Lin Yi laugh. Even an outsider like Lin Yi could see that compared to the time when they first entered the trial, the relationship between Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo was obviously a level closer. It was no longer just a little ambiguous. On this point alone, the Snow Sword School's young master Yin and his 2 followers really could not go unnoticed. However, Lin Yi did not intend to let these 3 heroes go. In any trial that did not forbid killing and seizing treasures was always the most basic rhythm. Although Lin Yi would not take the initiative to do this kind of shady business, but this kind of opportunity that was delivered to his door, he would not foolishly let it go. Taking advantage of Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo's gazes, Lin Yi went forward and turned over the bodies of the three people, carefully searching them from top to bottom. When all the things were cleared out, he could not help but secretly curse the poor bastard. What the hell was on their bodies? It was simply a pile of garbage. Looking at the spoils of war that Lin Yi constantly plundered from the bodies of the three people, Hui Yudi, who had nothing to do, could not help but swallow her saliva. These three people were experts at the peak of Yuanying stage and late Yuanying stage. Who would carry garbage on their bodies? Although these things were not treasures, even in Hui Yudi's eyes, they were quite good. Unfortunately, in the eyes of Lin Yi, these things were really worthless. He was in a primitive place like the Lufeng forest, and directly swept away a lot of heavenly materials and earthly treasures like a lawnmower. At the same time, he also plundered so many good things from so many people. What entered his eyes were all rare treasures such as infant ginseng, myriad crossing golden dan fruit, and star ink milk. Unknowingly, his eyes had been trained, so he did not look at these things. Brother Qi, these three people are your fortune. These three people are your good fortune, so the things that came to you will naturally belong to you. Take these and put them away. After Lin Yi finished looting, he waved his hand and gave everything to Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo on the spot. He didn't keep anything for himself. Of course, to be more precise, he didn't like any of them. Previously, he could even casually take out something like the nascent soul golden pill, so it was not surprising that Lin Yi would say such a thing. Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo looked at each other and couldn't help but feel a little happy. After all, these things were already quite good for them. No matter what, the strength of the three people was obvious. The things found on their bodies were treasures for the early Yuanying stage masters, except for a freak like Lin Yi. Hui Yudi pouted when she heard that. Lin Yi was so stingy when he was talking to her about splitting the profits, as if he couldn't wait to explode on her body. Why was he so generous to his two friends now? Among the treasures that they had plundered, there were quite a few rare things that were actually given away so easily. She still wanted them. It was just that Lin Yi had done this now. She was also too embarrassed to speak. Qi Wenhan looked at Hui Yudi, who wanted to say something but stopped. Lin Yi was generous, and as a brother, he accepted the things with a clear conscience. But he couldn't ignore the feelings of others, especially a beauty like Hui Yudi who was by Lin Yi's side. Even if he couldn't help much at the moment, he definitely couldn't become Lin Yi's pig teammate. This must be sister-in-law's wife, right? Qi Wenhan greeted Hui Yudi with a smile. Without waiting for Hui Yudi to explain, he divided the spoils that Lin Yi had plundered into two. One was for him and Xia Luoluo, and the other was naturally for Hui Yudi. He smiled and said, "Everyone who saw it has a share. These are all gifts from Brother Ling, let's divide them together." I don't want it. Hui Yudi's face instantly turned red. She actually forgot to refute the previous sentence, and could only hurriedly wave her hands. She quickly retreated behind Lin Yi. "You want it?" Lin Yi finally saw through Hui Yudi's thoughts, and couldn't help but be a little surprised. He thought that with Hui Yudi's strength and experience, she shouldn't be much lower than him, and wouldn't be interested in these people's things. Little did he know that he was purely judging others by his own standards, and thought that everyone was like him, having one fortuitous encounter after another. Seeing Lin Yi's gaze fall on her face, Hui Yudi couldn't help but feel a little flustered and nervous. She lowered her head, not daring to meet his gaze, and didn't know what to say for a moment. "Then you choose a few," Lin Yi said indifferently. As for Qi Wenhan's suggestion of splitting the spoils in half, there was no need. Firstly, he and Xia Luoluo couldn't just split it in half. Moreover, with Hui Yudi's experience, she wouldn't want many of the things here, and would at most choose a few. "Forget it." Hui Yudi shook her head and said softly. "Oh, then forget it." Lin Yi had a face of indifference. Hui Yuti stared at Lin Yi with all her might, and was immediately angered to death by him. I'm a girl, and I'm just being shy to decline, that's all. As a man, can't you ask once more? If you ask once more, I can just push the boat with the current and accept it, really. Although he couldn't see the expression under the veil, Lin Yi could more or less see what this little girl was thinking through her eyes. He couldn't help but smile. What do you want? I'll give it to you again. This is nothing. If it was anyone else who said such big words, Hui Yuti would definitely scoff at it. However, since it was Lin Yi, it was completely different. At the very least, the strength that Lin Yi had displayed was indeed worthy of this promise. Hui Yuti looked at Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo and whispered to Lin Yi with a red face, there are supplementary materials for refining that elixir. Although they aren't very rare, they aren't very easy to find. Even though she knew that Lin Yi and Qi Wenhan were very familiar with each other, she was still very cautious and didn't mention keywords like the Thunder Xian pill and the Thunder Xian vine. After all, this matter was of great importance. If it was accidentally leaked out and people knew that there was a Thunder Xian vine in this place, all kinds of problems would inevitably arise midway, and it might even lead to a failure at the final step. Then, she would want to cry but have no tears. Oh, you don't have to worry about this. I have all those things. Lin Yi smiled as if he had everything under control. From the first day he arrived at the Heavenly Stage Island, he had been working on building a reserve. After 2 years, it had already reached a considerable scale. Basically, all the supplementary materials for mainstream elixirs were all ready. At most, extremely rare treasures like the Thunder Xian vine needed to be obtained by chance. As for the rest, he didn't need to spend much effort. Chapter 4690. I won't be courteous with you, Brother Ling. Then it would be impolite of us to refuse, heh. Qi Wenhan saw that Lin Yi had already spoken, and did not continue to refuse. He knew Lin Yi's personality, and even more so, he knew Lin Yi's strength. This was indeed nothing in his eyes. Thank you, Brother Ling. Xia Luoluo blushed and walked over to meekly thank Lin Yi. Since Qi Wenhan called him Brother Ling, she could only follow suit and call him Brother Ling. Don't mention it, we're family after all. Lin Yi chuckled playfully, and Xia Luoluo blushed even more. She hurriedly ran over to Qi Wenhan's side to collect the things, but did not refute him. This meant that she had already begun to accept this way of thinking from the bottom of her heart. Seeing that Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo had collected all the things, and after confirming that there were no other threats in the surroundings, Lin Yi finally said his goodbyes. All right, I won't disturb the two of you anymore. We're leaving. Oh, thank you, Brother Ling. Be careful on the road, we'll have a good drink when we get back. Qi Wenhan nodded, and at the same time, he could not help but look at Xia Luoluo. However, their gazes instantly parted as if they had been electrocuted. At this moment, their minds were filled with Lin Yi's words, a world of the two of them. Lin Yi waved his hand with a smile, and immediately turned to leave with Hui Yuti. Although it was good to meet Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo here, it was still a waste of time. It was better to hurry on with their journey. After watching Lin Yi and Hui Yuti leave, Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo were silent for a while. Qi Wenhan felt like 100 claws were scratching at his heart. His face and neck were red, and he struggled for a long time, but he could not say a word. Don't be fooled by his performance when he was forced into a dead end by young Master Yin and the other two. Unfortunately, in this kind of romantic moment, a person like him would be bashful and timid instead. He was even more timid than an ordinary person. He could not say the words he had said to young Master Yin and the other two even if he was beaten to death. Xia Luoluo was a little embarrassed. She couldn't help but feel angry and amused at the same time. It was fortunate that she had revealed her true feelings in the moment of danger. Otherwise, with this blockhead's personality, if they really wanted to be together, it would be impossible. He didn't know how long he would have to wait. Fortunately, we met Brother Ling this time. Otherwise, we would really be in trouble. Xia Luoluo sighed slightly, and could only take the lead to break the silence. Yes. Yes, I'm sorry, Luo. I was too careless this time. I didn't notice that these three people would target us from the beginning. I didn't protect you, Qi Wenhan said with a sad expression. It was really his negligence this time. As someone who came from a chaotic place like the South Continent Sea region, his sense of danger was much stronger than that of ordinary cultivators. However, at the thought of spending time alone with Xia Luo, he could not control himself. How could he pay attention to these hidden dangers? Originally, when they left the canyon, everyone scattered to gather according to their luck. He and Xia Luo's luck was not bad, and they soon found a unique natural treasure, but they did not expect it to become a source of disaster. Because the two of them had already been targeted from the beginning. No, if it wasn't for you, I would have been defiled by these three beasts. Xia Luo shook her head. After pausing for a moment, she suddenly said in a small voice, I really liked the words you said just now. Ah. What words? Qi Wenhan did not recover his senses for a moment. He asked stupidly. Stupid. Xia Luo was speechless and stomped her feet. She rolled her eyes at this silly boy who did not know how to flirt. She could only change the topic and say, that girl wearing a veil just now, if I remember correctly, should be a disciple of the East Continent's Morning Pride Academy. Is Brother Ling also an old acquaintance of hers? I don't know. It doesn't look like it. I only know that Brother Ling's two confidants are Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. They are both in the Morning Star Academy. Qi Wenhan shook his head. Is that so? But why do I feel that there's something between the two of them? If they just met, the progress wouldn't be so fast, right? Xia Luo could not help but ask curiously. Although it was not very obvious, but Hui Yudi and Lin Yi had clearly done something ambiguous. This did not escape her eyes, and it looked like Hui Yudi was the one who initiated it. Really? Qi Wenhan paused for a moment before coming back to his senses. He couldn't help but speak with envy, as expected of Brother Ling, he's too amazing. Even the beauties of the Eastern Continent have fallen for him. No wonder Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao are so loyal to him. TSK. What? From your tone, it sounds like you're very envious. Xia Luo turned to look at Qi Wenhan, her tone strange. This, as long as it's a man. Qi Wenhan subconsciously replied. Only when he felt the killing intent did he react. His brain sped up for once, it's impossible to be like Brother Ling. Someone like Brother Ling only appears once every few thousand years. How can I compare to him? As long as I have one, I'll be satisfied. I can die without regrets. Humph, that's more like it. Xia Luo's lips curled into a slight smile. Although she had disguised herself, the flirtatious look she showed in that instant still made Qi Wenhan completely dumbfounded. Seeing Qi Wenhan's expression, Xia Luo could not help but lower her head shyly. She really was an idiot. On the other side, after Hui Yudi had followed Lin Yi for a while, she finally could not help but ask, hey, after we find the Thunder Mystic Vine, you won't kill me, will you? Lin Yi, who was leading the way, lost his footing when he heard that. He was completely shocked by this girl's wild thoughts. What was she even talking about? Lin Yi turned around, speechlessly glancing at this girl who had no idea what she was thinking. With a mischievous face, he said, if you want to kill, you should kill first. Ah. I see. Then can you just kill without killing? Hui Yudi blinked. Pfft. Cough, cough, cough. Lin Yi immediately choked. Just now, he had only thought that this girl's thoughts were strange. Now, he was completely shocked. Just kill without killing? Was this an answer that a normal girl could think of? Wasn't Xia Luo's decision to rather die than submit the right way? Or was it that the East Continent was special, and they had been taught this way since they were young? Compared to reputation and integrity, preserving one's life was more important? Humph, don't think that I don't know that you're not the kind of person who casually kills people. If you were really that cruel, you would have already killed Ren Zhongyuan and the others. Hui Yudi said with a face full of certainty. Chapter 4691. On the contrary, in the face of Ren Zhongyuan and the others' mockery and ridicule, Lin Yi remained calm from beginning to end. He didn't have the slightest intention of arguing with these ignorant people. This was extremely rare. At least if she was in Lin Yi's position, Hui Yudi wouldn't have such a calm temperament. Even if she didn't kill them on the spot to establish her dominance, she would definitely teach them a lesson. She obviously had a body full of strength, but after being mocked and ridiculed in front of her, she still acted like nothing had happened. How strong was her temperament? Little did they know that there was a special term for this kind of thing. It was called pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Lin Yi had been an expert in this since the beginning of his career. If a few so-called geniuses who thought highly of themselves could make him impatient like this, then all of Lin Yi's previous cultivation would have been in vain. All right, I really admire you. Lin Yi smiled, looked at the girl, and said, let's go quickly. Aren't you shy? You're still talking about it. Hui Yudi's pretty face turned red. This guy really brought up her sore spot. After the episode just now, she had finally put that embarrassing scene to the back of her mind. In the blink of an eye, this guy brought it up again. It was really infuriating. Looking at Hui Yudi angrily walking in front, Lin Yi could only shake his head speechlessly. He was puzzled. What was going on? Why did it feel like this girl suddenly became a lot more unyielding? A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. This saying was not false at all. Men could never figure out what a woman was thinking, because this in itself was an unsolvable proposition. As they continued forward, Hui Yudi once again took the lead like she did at the beginning. With her strength of nascent soul stage, as long as she didn't become absent-minded, there was no problem at all for her to lead the way. Moreover, there was Lin Yi behind her to protect her. Basically, even if there was any danger in front of them, before Hui Yudi could react, he would have already killed it. There really wasn't any threat along the way. After a few hours, the sky gradually darkened again. A blood-red crescent moon appeared in the sky. It was hazy, giving people the feeling that the moon had grown hair. Lin Yi looked up, pinched his chin, smacked his lips, and muttered, Mao Yueliang? And with such a strong blood qi? This isn't an auspicious sign. However, on second thought, the land beneath his feet was a remnant of an ancient battlefield. To put it bluntly, it was a supermass grave since ancient times. Killing intent, baleful aura, and corpse aura were all gathered together. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was the most dangerous place in the world, so it was normal for the so-called blood-colored moon to appear. Lin Yi himself didn't take it to heart. This kind of folklore was used to scare children. However, after Hui Yudi, who was walking in front of him, heard his murmur, she suddenly stopped moving. Although she was an expert at the great perfection of the nascent soul stage, she was still a girl. No matter how strong she was still afraid of these legends. Especially at this moment, the blood-colored hairy moon above her head, no matter how she looked at it, it really made people panic. Originally, she was still walking in front of Lin Yi with big strides, at least about 5 feet away from him. As a result, after Lin Yi muttered this sentence, this chick suddenly fell in front of Lin Yi. It was less than 5 feet in front and behind, and if he was not careful, he could step on her heel. But even so, Hui Yudi still insisted on walking in front of him in a fit of pique. However, after walking for a while, the surrounding light was getting dimmer and dimmer. Even the blood moon hanging in the air was looming, and it even gradually disappeared in the thick clouds. After a while, there was no light in the surroundings. This was the darkness before dawn. Hui Yudi really couldn't stand it anymore. She said weakly, "Can we walk later? I feel a little tired." As she said this, she had unknowingly fallen behind Lin Yi. Because there was not even a bit of light in the surroundings, she really did not have the courage to continue walking in front. Even at this moment, even following behind Lin Yi made her feel a little afraid. Without any light, unless she constantly used her divine sense like Lin Yi, she would not be able to lock onto Lin Yi's position, even if Lin Yi was less than 10 feet in front of her. It was a pity that she was not Lin Yi. She did not have an endless supply of spirit qi, and the strength of her divine sense was far from as tough and powerful as Lin Yi's. If she had to use her divine sense at all times, let alone finding the Thunder Xian vine, just halfway through the journey would cause her spirit to collapse. But fortunately, compared to ordinary cultivators, Hui Yudi had a special talent. She could follow Lin Yi's scent and move forward. It was just that this method could only determine a general direction, and could not accurately lock onto him like divine sense, so she inevitably felt a little nervous. Tired? Lin Yi, who was walking in front, was stunned when he heard this. He did not look back, but directly used his divine sense to size up Hui Yudi. Seeing that her body was slightly trembling, he immediately understood and could not help but feel a little funny. He said, "Are you afraid?" "You are the one who is afraid. I have experienced all kinds of trials in the past, and there are many that are more dangerous than this." "This is nothing," Hui Yudi stubbornly said. "Oh, then rest for a while." Lin Yi found it funny, but he did not insist. Since Hui Yudi was afraid, then stop and rest for a while. Anyway, the darkness before dawn would only last for a while, and it would be sunrise soon. Hui Yudi heaved a sigh of relief. She immediately hugged her legs and sat down. She was a morning beauty, but she wasn't a spoiled young lady. She was already used to sitting on the ground in the wild. After a moment of silence, feeling that Lin Yi was still standing next to her, Hui Yudi suddenly frowned and pouted. "Why are you standing in front of me? Do you want to peek at my collar?" Pfft! Lin Yi almost choked again. He did not know why, but after interacting with this girl for a long time, she could always inexplicably come up with a stroke, making him not know whether to laugh or cry. What can I see in this dark and windy night? She could not even see the figure in front of her clearly, and she could still peek at his collar. What kind of strange logic was this? Others can't see, but maybe you can. Hui Yudi curled her lips and said. You overestimate me. My eyes are not specially trained like your nose. Don't worry, what you can't see, I can't see either. Lin Yi helplessly spread out his hands. Chapter 4692. Then what do you think I should do? Lin Yi was completely helpless. This chick's clothes were tightly wrapped from top to bottom. Although her figure was graceful and attractive, it was simply a fool's dream to say that there was something substantial on her body. Was she afraid that he would peek at her neckline? Especially in such an environment where one couldn't even see their own fingers? Sit down, but don't sit too far from me. If you sit too far away, who knows if your place is higher? Hui Yudi said after thinking about it. Okay, I really give up. Lin Yi really couldn't complain at this time, so he could only sit next to her. He couldn't help but wonder how this chick's brain worked. Why was her thinking circuit so different from ordinary people? In fact, Hui Yudi's face was also red at this time. She didn't know why, but she inexplicably wanted Lin Yi to sit with her, so she racked her brain to find so many strange reasons. It wasn't that there was something wrong with her brain. The moon was dark, and the wind was strong. Everything was silent, and there was no one around. Lin Yi and Hui Yudi sat side by side, neither of them talking, but they could clearly feel each other's breathing and heartbeat. It was a very subtle feeling, as if the two of them had unknowingly gotten closer to each other, especially when the awkward scene from before flashed through their minds. The atmosphere couldn't help but become a little flirtatious, and one couldn't help but blush. Hui Yudi hurriedly shook her head with all her might. If she continued to let her thoughts run wild, she reckoned that her brain would be fried. When she was with this guy, why did she always think of such shameful things? What are you doing? Lin Yi turned his head and looked at her strangely. Although it was too dark to see clearly, he could still clearly feel the other party's shaking movement. Could it be that this chick didn't get rid of the poison completely, and there was a side effect on her body? No, nothing, what am I doing? Huiyuti was shocked, and quickly denied it with a red face. She suddenly found an excuse and said, "There are mosquitoes here." Mosquitoes? Lin Yi was suddenly stunned. How could there be mosquitoes in this barren land? Even if there were, his divine sense was always open. Any movement within 100 feet could not be hidden from the omnipresent divine sense. How could he not sense it? Yes, mosquitoes. Huiyuti bit to death. Afraid that Lin Yi would continue to question her, she quickly changed the topic. Do you know, I have never known who my parents are since I was young. The only reason I am still alive is because Master found me in the wild. Otherwise, I would have been an abandoned baby, and not even my bones would have been left. Oh, I'm about the same as you. Lin Yi nodded. He didn't expect that this girl would have such a life experience. She seemed to be in the same boat as him. You? Didn't you come from the secular world? Huiyuti couldn't help but be surprised, but she immediately realized that she had asked a stupid question. Whether or not they came from the secular world had nothing to do with their origins. There were abandoned babies on Heaven's Stage Island, so naturally, there were also abandoned babies in the secular world. Yes, I have a grandfather in the secular world who is half a master and half a senior, including medical skills. He was the one who taught me all kinds of miscellaneous things that I have. At that time, I was tormented by him a lot. Hee. Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh. After coming to Heaven's Stage Island for so long, he didn't know how old man Lin was doing now. However, what made him feel more at ease was that, from the replies from the people in the secular world, old man Lin was living quite comfortably in the West Star Mountain village, and Aunt Qing was finally with him. From this point of view, old man Lin was actually quite lucky, and there was really nothing to worry about. Me too. Master is the same to me. Without her, I wouldn't be who I am today. Huiyuti nodded repeatedly. With such a similar life experience, she suddenly felt that the distance between her and Lin Yi was closer. Maybe they would have a lot in common. After a pause, she changed the topic and asked, then, do you want to go back to the secular world? Is this place better or the secular world better? Naturally, the secular world. Lin Yi answered without hesitation. It was true that in terms of strength and cultivation conditions, 10,000 secular worlds couldn't compare to one Heaven Stage Island. However, he always believed that the secular world was his root. Without the secular world, there would be no him, and he wouldn't have reached his current level. Moreover, most of the women he cared about the most were in the secular world. The eldest miss and the others were still waiting for him to go back and save them. Therefore, no matter what, even if he had to pay all the price, Lin Yi must return to the secular world. This was his greatest wish and goal. Why? Is it because there are rich men and universities there? Huiyuti suddenly asked curiously. Pfft, both. Lin Yi almost choked again. Why is this girl so persistent about rich men? I just mentioned it casually at the beginning, but I didn't expect her to keep it in mind. As for universities, it was probably because he mentioned it casually that she remembered it. However, from this point alone, it could be seen that this girl should be quite interested in the secular world. It felt similar to Shangguan Laner. They were the kind of people who were full of fantasies and longing for the secular world. No wonder. That guy Ren Zhongyuan always likes to go to the Central Chamber of Commerce to buy some strange things. He said that they are all imported goods from the secular world. They are all very useful. It seems to be very popular recently. When Huiyuti said this, she couldn't help but think of the camera. It was a good thing that Ren Zhongyuan spent a lot of money to buy. At first, when he said that he would give it to her, she was actually very interested and almost accepted it on the spot. However, in the end, her disgust for this guy prevailed. She gritted her teeth and pushed the camera back. Now that she thought about it, although she didn't regret it, she still felt a little regretful. Well, you can say that. Lin Yi nodded. The biggest role of the Central Chamber of Commerce after its emergence was to set off a wave of technology on Heaven Stage Island. This greatly improved the status of the secular world on Heaven Stage Island. Now, when the secular world was mentioned again, at least no one would say that the secular world was useless. As far as these technological products were concerned, although they weren't like divine weapons or elixirs that could play a substantial role for cultivators, many of their functions were still very practical. Even the top big shots on Heaven Stage Island had to admit that in some aspects, even high-level cultivators were inferior to them. For example, the camera and the mobile phone that Lin Yi carried. Chapter 4693. As for the mobile phone, although Lin Yi had not personally tested whether there was a signal or not, if there was no such thing, it was impossible to achieve long-distance communication. The so-called 1,000-mile sound transmission was just an illusory legend. In reality, no one had seen it. Strictly speaking, the mobile phone was the real 1,000-mile sound transmission. If there is a chance. Hui Yudi suddenly said. Lin Yi frowned and waited for her to continue. If there is a chance, take me. Hui Yudi was still hesitating. The more she spoke, the more shy she became. In the end, her voice was so low that it could not be heard. Only she could guess. Lin Yi turned his head and looked at her strangely. Although it was too dark to see clearly, he still subconsciously made this action. What does this chick want to express? Why is he acting so bashful? Could it be something very embarrassing? That shouldn't be the case, right? Although they had that awkward scene, Lin Yi felt that this chick should be a traditional woman in her bones. If there is a chance, take me to the secular world. When Lin Yi couldn't help but let his imagination run wild, Hui Yudi finally finished her words. However, her voice was so low that even Lin Yi could barely hear it. You want to go to the secular world? Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised. This sentence was a bit familiar. In his memory, Shanghai Laner seemed to have said something similar. If you don't want to take me, then forget it. I am just curious. Hui Yudi pouted. Hee, if you want to go, of course you can, but the premise is that I can go back. It is not easy to go from the secular world to the heavenly island. It is even more difficult to go back from the heavenly island to the secular world. We will see when the time comes. Lin Yi sighed. Although this chick's brain was strange and a little incomprehensible, he didn't hate it. At least from the bottom of his heart, he had begun to treat this chick as a friend. Not a purely beneficial partner. Yeah, I have never heard of anyone who can go back. She heard Lin Yi's sigh. Hui Yudi hurriedly explained, I'm just saying. I don't have any other meaning. Don't take it seriously. Since you've already said it, how can I not take it seriously? Let's see if there's a chance. If I can go back, I'll call you. Lin Yi smiled. Although it was indeed very difficult to return to the secular world from Heaven Stage Island, according to the information he currently had, it would be very difficult. In fact, the probability of success was not as low as one would imagine. Thinking about it carefully, there were at least 3 options. The first option was also the most reliable one, and that was to find Zhang Liju. That damn thing's personal experience had proven that he had a reliable way, and with his relationship with Zhang Liju, as long as he could find him, he believed that Zhang Liju wouldn't reject him right away. The only difficulty was when they would be able to meet this legendary figure who was elusive and elusive. As for the second method, it fell on the Central Chamber of Commerce. It was very clear that the Central Chamber of Commerce had a way to freely travel between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. If they could find a way to find out, naturally, Lin Yi would have a chance. However, this method was much more difficult than the first one. After all, the Central Chamber of Commerce had a lot of strong practitioners. Although Lin Yi could kill profound ascension practitioners in seconds, if he really went in, he would still end up as a corpse on the street. As for the third method, it fell on Han Jingjing. Although it was a bit ridiculous for her to research the mystery of the teleportation circle between Heaven's Stage Island and the secular world, which of her previous research wasn't a miracle, as long as she had enough conditions and time. Lin Yi really didn't think that this was impossible. Hui Yidi couldn't help but feel a little happy, although she knew in her heart that after this West Island trial, she and Lin Yi wouldn't have much interaction, but after hearing this, she felt a little expectant. If only she could really go to the secular world with this guy. As the two talked, the sky gradually brightened. Although the visibility was still not high, at least it wasn't as dark as before. After talking with Lin Yi for a while, Hui Yidi was finally not afraid anymore, and the two immediately got up and continued on their way. However, not long after they walked, Lin Yi suddenly heard a soft rumbling sound beside him. He couldn't help but look towards the sound and saw Hui Yidi with her head down and her face red. She was almost looking for a hole to hide in. "Are you hungry?" The corner of Lin Yi's mouth curled up a little. "Practitioners don't need to eat, I'm not hungry." Hui Yidi still had her head down and didn't dare to look at anyone, but she said it quite firmly. Hee. Lin Yi shook his head with a faint smile. Although it was true that practitioners didn't need to eat, it didn't mean that they really didn't eat. This was an innate instinct. Even if the body wasn't hungry, it would still have this reaction unconsciously after a long time. Just like Hui Yidi's stomach growling, this was a clear proof. If practitioners really didn't need to eat, so many high-end restaurants on the Heaven Stage Island would have been closed long ago. How could it be seen everywhere now? Lin Yi felt that the various kinds of delicacies on the Heaven Stage Island were no worse than those in the secular world. Some of them were even sold at a very high price, and there were still many diners and guests. Lin Yi suddenly took out some extremely delicate and delicious pastries, turned his head and handed them to Hui Yidi, saying, "Here, satisfy your craving." "Where did you get them from?" Hui Yidi's eyes widened in disbelief. Her throat squirmed uncontrollably, and she almost drooled. "I conjured them." Lin Yi smiled mysteriously. "Ah." Hui Yidi couldn't help but be startled. She'd been watching him the whole time, and this guy clearly didn't bring anything with him. He didn't even have a normal backpack, and he came empty-handed. It wasn't strange for him to have some small treasures on him, but where did these delicate-looking pastries come from? Hui Yidi thought to herself. It couldn't really be conjured out of thin air, right? She had never heard of such a magical power in the world. "All right, don't be silly. Since there are ready-made ones, eat them quickly," Lin Yi said and started eating first. "Wait, leave some for me." Hui Yidi looked really greedy, and immediately stopped thinking about how these things were conjured. She quickly snatched a piece from Lin Yi's hand and ate it in small bites. Chapter 4694. Lin Yi looked at Hui Yidi's careful eating and couldn't help but smile. These exquisite pastries were actually put into the jade space from the envoy's mansion in West Island. Anyway, the space was very large. Now he put whatever he saw in it, so that he could be prepared. The two divided the pastries Lin Yi took out. After eating, Hui Yidi wiped the corner of her mouth with some desire. At this time, Lin Yi suddenly said, "Do you want more?" "Ah. You have more?" Hui Yidi was shocked again. She looked at Lin Yi up and down as if she was looking at a monster. What was this guy made of? He didn't even carry a bag when he went out. How could he hide so many pastries at will? "Yes, if you want to eat, I will definitely make sure you are full." Lin Yi nodded. "Ugh. I think I'll pass." Hui Yidi shook her head after some hesitation. Eating was just a habit to her, and it wasn't necessary for her to eat too much. A girl eating so much in front of others would be laughed at. She didn't know why, but she didn't want to be laughed at by this guy. "Oh, then forget it." Lin Yi put it away indifferently. Hui Yudi suddenly felt depressed again. Why was this guy like this every time? Once he said no, he immediately let it go. Couldn't he ask again? Didn't he know that girls should be more reserved? What the hell was this chick doing? Seeing Hui Yudi sulking and walking away, Lin Yi couldn't help but shake his head helplessly. Women were difficult to understand, and this chick changed every now and then. It was especially difficult to understand. However, Lin Yi didn't need to understand. He was with Hui Yudi purely for the Thunder Xian Ratan. As long as it didn't interfere with this fundamental purpose, he would let this chick do whatever she wanted. The two hurried on their way again. As a result, after walking for less than an hour, the scene in the distance suddenly changed. That place was the opposite of the barren scene in the surrounding places. It was lush and green. It was like a fairyland on earth. Oasis? Lin Yi was overjoyed. Anyone who had walked in this monotonous desert for 2 days and suddenly saw a rare oasis would definitely be overjoyed. For ordinary people, seeing such a lush green oasis in the desert was no less than grasping at a life-saving straw. For a cultivator like Lin Yi, although it was not that exaggerated, his mood instantly improved. He could not help but feel refreshed just by looking at it from afar. Hui Yudi's reaction was much more direct than Lin Yi's. After exclaiming excitedly, she immediately sprinted towards the direction of the oasis and walked for 2 whole days in the desert. Sitting and lying on the sand, her whole body was covered with dust and it was extremely uncomfortable. What she wanted to do the most now was to find a clear spring and take a good bath. Upon seeing this, Lin Yi did not try to dissuade her. Although it was somewhat dangerous for Hui Yudi to run like this, it was not a big problem with him keeping an eye on her from behind. His divine sense had already spread out in advance, so if there was any danger, he would be able to detect it in advance. The two of them quickly approached this rare oasis, and Hui Yudi could not wait to rush in. However, when she was about 1,000 feet away, she suddenly stopped and looked ahead with a frown. Why are there so many people? Lin Yi was a little surprised and stopped beside her. He could not see anything from afar, but now that he was close, he clearly found that within this oasis that was not considered big, there were actually dozens of people gathered. There were actually dozens of people gathered there, and these people were all gathered in one place. They didn't scatter, and it felt like they were having a party. What should we do? Hui Yudi could not help but turn her head to look at Lin Yi nervously. She did not know when, but she had already unconsciously regarded Lin Yi as the backbone. Could they also be here for the Thunder Xian Ratan? Lin Yi looked at her and said. Those who appeared here were naturally the participants of this trial, and there was only one thing that could make them gather together. That was the treasure of heaven and earth, and it definitely could not be an ordinary treasure of heaven and earth. Only rare treasures like the Thunder Xian Ratan could cause such a big stir. I don't think so. Hui Yudi thought for a while and said, although everyone knows about this ancient battlefield relic, the information about the Thunder Xian Ratan has always been confidential, and only a few people know about it. Unless someone spread the news with ulterior motives, it is impossible to gather so many people. If it really causes such a stir, the top management of West Island will definitely take action. Well, it makes sense. Lin Yi nodded. The existence of the Thunder Xian Ratan was a rare strategic resource for the entire West Island. It was okay if only a few people inside knew about it, but if it really caused an uproar and everyone knew about it, West Island would inevitably fall into chaos. Ning Shangling might even directly give a kill order. At that time, it was estimated that none of these trial takers who knew the news would survive. It was related to the core interests of the entire West Island, and there was no room for mercy. Although we took the shortest route, after all, we were delayed for a day, so these people probably came here from other directions. Don't worry, this place is still far from the Thunder Xian Ratan, Hui Yudi comforted him. That's good. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief and looked ahead with a frown. But something must have happened there, or it is impossible for so many people to gather here. Let's be careful. Okay. Huiyuti also looked dignified. Although the oasis would naturally attract people to stop, it was definitely not a small matter that so many people gathered here inexplicably. Even if it had nothing to do with the Thunder Xian Ratan, they could not take it lightly. This is the only way, right? Lin Yi asked. Yes, our destination is after the 10,000-year canyon, and this oasis is the only entrance to the 10,000-year canyon. Huiyuti nodded and said. Then there's no other choice. Let's go. He took the lead and walked forward. Although there was definitely something wrong with this abnormal situation, it was just as I said before. A trial of this level was not difficult at all for him. At most, it was just a matter of luck. As for the danger, if he could not handle it with his strength, then the other trial takers would have died long ago. Huiyuti carefully followed behind Lin Yi. She was not nervous in her heart, but instead had an intoxicating sense of security. Although this old-fashioned man was often unromantic, it had to be said that at least he gave people the feeling that he was very reliable. The two of them entered the oasis with caution. As soon as they entered the shade of the trees, they immediately felt a refreshing feeling of enlightenment, making them feel comfortable from head to toe. The tiredness from the journey was instantly swept away, and their entire body and mind involuntarily relaxed. Chapter 4695. Although the concentration of spiritual qi in this place could not be compared with that in the Five Poison Swamp, it was still very rare. It was even much better than some specially built caves in the North Island. This oasis is the throat of the 10,000 years Grand Canyon. All the spiritual qi in and out of the 10,000 years Grand Canyon will gather here. That's why it's so rich. It's also because of this that this oasis appeared. Otherwise, it would definitely be a desert. Huiyuti explained behind him. It could be seen that in order to obtain the Thunder Xian Ratan, this girl had done a lot of research on this place. After all, unlike Lin Yi, the primordial battlefield was still very dangerous for a perfected nascent soul cultivator like her. This oasis was not large, only a little more than 1,000 feet in radius. However, in such a small area, there were dozens of high-level cultivators gathered. Except for a few experts in the peak of the Gold Core realm, most of them were experts in the original infant realm. This was the mainstream strength of this trial. These people were gathered together at the moment, as if they were facing something together. Their faces were very dignified. Could it be that there was a terrible spirit beast blocking the way? Lin Yi and Huiyuti's appearance didn't cause any commotion, nor did they attract anyone's attention. At this moment, everyone's attention was on the empty space in front of them. There weren't any frightening spirit beasts there, but a group of practitioners. It was just that this group of people had a ferocious aura, and they weren't friendly people. Following the gaze of the crowd, Lin Yi glanced forward, and then his eyelids twitched unconsciously. He was extremely shocked. The leader of the group in front of him, a fierce man with a scar on his face, was actually a profound ascending stage master. Lin Yi couldn't help but rub his eyes. Did he see it wrong? Wasn't it said that only nascent soul stage masters and below could enter this place? Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to pass through the transmission array. Then what was going on with this profound ascending stage master? This fierce aura that was far above that of a nascent soul stage master couldn't be faked, right? Even if someone could fake his aura, it would definitely not be able to hide from Lin Yi's eyes. From head to toe, he could see that this scarred man was a genuine profound ascending stage master. Although he was only at the peak of the early stage of profound ascending stage, this guy appearing in this place. That in itself was already a huge piece of news. How about it? Is there anyone else who wants it? If you want to pass, hurry up and take out your money. As long as you take out enough heavenly materials and earthly treasures, I will let you pass. Don't worry, this 10,000-year Grand Canyon behind me is a primitive land that is rarely visited by humans. There are countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures inside, and it's very easy to recoup my losses. Ha 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 ha. Scarface looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. After listening to his words, Lin Yi and Hui Yudi immediately understood. It turned out that this group of people hadn't gathered here to fight over any heavenly treasures, but to meet a mountain king who had occupied the mountain. According to Hui Yudi, the 10,000-year Great Canyon was a rare treasure land in the primordial battlefield. Because of the unique environment here, there were far more natural treasures than in other places. If one were to try their luck in the desert, they might not be able to find a natural treasure even after 10 days or half a month. However, in this 10,000-year Great Canyon, there were many natural treasures. It was said that as long as one walked patiently for a day, there would be a harvest. In addition, the judging standard of the West Island trial test was the treasure of heaven and earth, so it was natural. Any trial taker with a little bit of information would find a way to come here, unless it was someone like Ren Zhongyuan who had other intentions. Only then would they let go of this legendary treasure land. Now that this mountain king had occupied the only entrance here, it was equivalent to holding everyone's weakness, and they could only obediently let him do whatever he wanted. After all, in the face of such a cruel and unruly profound ascending stage master, these nascent soul stage cultivators were really helpless. After all, there was no other freak like Lin Yi in the 5 heavenly islands. Who could cross a great realm to challenge a profound ascending stage master? Damn it. If this guy was alone, with so many of us together, I believe that even if he was a profound ascending stage master, he wouldn't be able to handle it. It's a pity that he has so many followers. A person not far from Lin Yi whispered bitterly. There's no other way, we're really unlucky. We actually met this scar-faced man. It seems that there's no hope for this West Island trial. The West Island princess has such a good opportunity to choose a husband, sigh. Another person sighed. Why did this scar-faced man appear in this place? Isn't it impossible for profound ascending stage masters to enter? Lin Yi asked quietly behind them. Hey, it's another unlucky newcomer. The man heard the words and looked back at Lin Yi. When he saw Hui Yudi, his eyes lit up, but after all, he was wearing a veil, so he didn't show too much of a pervert. He just shook his head and smiled bitterly. I heard from those who came earlier that this scar-faced man seemed to be in the bottleneck of the nascent soul peak in a previous trial. As a result, he got some kind of adventure during the trial, and then accidentally broke through, so he couldn't get out, and could only be trapped here as a mountain king. So that's how it is. Lin Yi glanced at Hui Yudi subconsciously. This girl was also at the bottleneck of nascent soul mastery. She wouldn't meet the same fate if she wasn't careful, would she? This place was really dangerous. Even a rare breakthrough could get her killed. That can only mean that his own strength is not enough. Controlling the realm of strength is a compulsory course for all East Continent college students, and it's the most basic. If he can't even do this, it can only mean that he can reach his current realm purely by luck, and his strength is seriously insufficient. Hui Yudi rolled her eyes at Lin Yi. Miss, are you from East Continent? The person just now glanced at Hui Yudi again. Seeing that Hui Yudi seemed to be too lazy to talk, he could only bitterly smile and say, that's right, but Scarface is a genuine early-stage profound ascension expert after all. No matter how strong a nascent soul stage is, in front of him, they are just vegetables. The situation is stronger than the person. What can we do? Yes, from what the scar-faced man said, he has been here for hundreds of years. The group of people around him also came back late from every trial, and in the end, they couldn't get out, so they were all gathered by him, and became a tyrant here. These people are all desperados, not to be trifled with. The others said with lingering fear. From your point of view, if we want to get to the Grand Canyon through here, we'll have to give him some treasures? Lin Yi asked again, not agreeing or disagreeing with the question. If you want to pass through here, you have to pay for the passage. This is the rules set by this mountain king. If you don't have the strength to resist, don't you have to give him treasures? A person said. Chapter 4696. Otherwise, you can just not go to the 10,000-year Grand Canyon, and they won't be able to stop you. However, if you do that, it will be difficult to gain anything from this trial. In my opinion, you should obediently do as they say. This way, you should be able to get back what you spent in the 10,000-year Grand Canyon. You might even be lucky. Are you stupid? You dare to believe Scarface's bullshit about eating people without spitting out the bones? It's true that there are good things in the 10,000-year Grand Canyon, but you can't just casually pick up all the treasures in there. You can't even imagine how many terrifying things are in there. Even if you go in, it's hard to say if you can come out alive. You want to get back what you spent? That's right. Do you know how big Scarface's appetite is? Even if you go in, even if you are really lucky enough to find something good, when you come out, won't he plunder it again? Will he let you go so easily? Can't you use a little more brains? Another person echoed. The moment they said this, the expressions of the nearby cultivators turned incomparably ugly. This was the truth. Scarface was definitely not a kind and honest person. If he let you in, he would plunder you, and if he let you out, of course he would plunder you as well. This was something that could be understood even with one's toes. If they worked for him for free, and even risked their lives, then what was the point of doing anything? What else is there to say? We can only avoid this damn place. Even if the harvest is a little less, it's still better than being plundered by Scarface. I'm not stupid. Immediately, someone had the thought of retreating. Many people had the same thought, but not everyone was willing to retreat just like that. After all, once they retreated, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack in the desert. Instead of that, it was better to take a risk and seek riches in danger. Sure enough, while everyone was talking in low voices, a man in gray suddenly jumped out from the crowd. He instantly attracted everyone's attention. I am Duan Wuzong of the Thousand Blades sect. I don't have any treasures on me. Because of this, I must go to the 10,000-year Grand Canyon. I believe you don't want to fight to the death over such a small matter. That won't be good for either of us. As the gray-robed man spoke, he revealed a powerful and overbearing aura. He was an expert at the peak of the nascent soul realm. The moment this Duan Wuzong appeared, the crowd went into an uproar. Everyone's eyes widened. The reason they were stuck here was because they lacked a leader. But now, it finally appeared. Oh, it looks like a tough guy has come and is ready to challenge me alone. Scarface looked disdainful and carelessly glanced at Duan Wuzong. I wouldn't dare. Whether the others live or die has nothing to do with me. I'm just asking you to open the door. After all, if we really fight, it won't be a good thing for both of us. Someone might even fish in troubled waters. What do you think? Duan Wuzong's tone was hard to conceal his pride. Hee, this guy is going to walk into a mine. From afar, Lin Yi smiled and shook his head. This Thousand Blades sect's Duan Wuzong was indeed a rare expert, and could be considered an outstanding existence among the group of peak nascent soul stage cultivators. It was normal to have this kind of arrogance and confidence. Unfortunately, the opponent was a peak early stage profound ascension expert and wouldn't fall for it. You don't think he's good? Huiyuti couldn't help but ask curiously. In her opinion, this person's strength was very strong. Just as he had said, if they really fought, even if it wasn't a lose-lose situation, it would definitely cause Scarface a lot of trouble. If Scarface was afraid of him, he might really let him go. Of course. Scarface's group is small in number. They can only suppress so many people by relying on deterrence. If he sets a precedent, do you think so many people here will still be trembling in fear and not dare to move? Once the situation gets out of control, even with Scarface's strength, he won't be able to control it. Then he will completely fail as the Mountain King. Lin Yi analyzed. Then what will he do? Huiyuti asked thoughtfully. Of course he will destroy this Duan Wuzong with lightning speed. As long as he can establish his power in one fell swoop, no one here will dare to resist him. They can only obediently let him plunder. Lin Yi smiled faintly. At the same time, he put himself aside. A peak early-stage profound ascension expert was an unparalleled deterrent to others, but don't forget that he had killed a profound ascension expert a long time ago, and it was a one-hit kill. Before Lin Yi's voice fell, Scarface made a decision and laughed. Ha ha ha, Lousy has occupied this place for so many years, and there really aren't many who dare to threaten Lousy. Surnamed Duan, you're a bit interesting, but unfortunately, you miscalculated. Threaten Lousy? Humph, do you think Lousy is the kind of coward who is afraid of threats? After saying that, Scarface suddenly let out a long roar and immediately attacked. Duan Wuzong was shocked. He stood up not to fight Scarface, but simply to make the other party feel that he was not to be trifled with, so he retreated. Who would have thought that the other party would not even spare him a glance? Now that he was riding a tiger, he had no choice but to fight. Clang! 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 Accompanied by an ear-piercing sound of metal colliding, a pile of divine weapons suddenly appeared on Duan Wuzong's body. All kinds of swords, spears, swords, halberds, everything needed. There were at least 13 of them, and no one knew how he carried them with him. They all floated around him, and the formation was quite astonishing. There was a sudden gasp of cold air. Although they had not officially fought, this Duan Wuzong was really strong. Looking at his posture, he could actually control 13 weapons at the same time. It was really incredible. If an ordinary expert fought against him, wouldn't they be beaten to death by these weapons in a matter of minutes? I've long heard that the Thousand Blades sex martial techniques are unique. It is said that the stronger the Thousand Blades sex disciple is, the more weapons they can control. When they reach the limit, it is even possible to achieve 1,000 blades at the same time. Seeing it today, it is indeed a well-deserved reputation. Hui Yudi sighed. Hee, it is indeed a bit interesting. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but be interested. He had seen many experts before, and there was no lack of all kinds of strange methods, but this was the first time he had seen someone who could control more than 10 weapons at the same time. I'll say it one last time. If you let me go, nothing will happen between us. Otherwise, when the situation becomes chaotic, and there are so many people here, the situation is not something you can control. Duan Wuzong still did not want to use weapons unless it was absolutely necessary. Although he had full confidence in his own strength, to say that he could really defeat an expert at the peak of the early stage of mysterious ascension was obviously a pipe dream. Chapter 4697. If they really fought, no matter how the situation developed in the end, as the opponent's first target, he would definitely not be able to get away with it. He was well aware of this point. So much bullshit. Scarface roared loudly, and the aura on his body suddenly skyrocketed to an extremely terrifying degree. His entire body seemed like an overlord that had descended into the world, and he instantly wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves. The weather changed, and he sneered without end. You still want to mess up the situation? Humph, with this old man here, can the situation be messed up? Refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. You asked for it. Duan Wuzong saw this and no longer hesitated. The murderous intent on his body intensified, and the 13 weapons floating in the air all made a sharp sound. He suddenly roared, 1,000 blades, return to me, one-line kill. Before he finished speaking, the 13 weapons howled at the same time, their speed instantly increasing to a point where it was hard to see with the naked eye. They formed a long snake and attacked Scarface. Their speed was fast, and their power was strong, causing everyone present to raise their eyebrows. Anyone could see that after these 13 weapons formed the one-line kill array, their power was not as simple as 1 + 1. From the first to the 13th, as they broke through the opponent's defense step by step, the damage also increased. Anything in front of them would be pierced through. When faced with such a frightening attack, dodging was the only choice. However, just when everyone thought that this was the case, Scarface suddenly laughed loudly. He did not dodge or evade. Only when the 13 weapons came close to his body did he suddenly throw out a punch. In an instant, the sky changed color. Everyone could only faintly hear the roar of 10,000 beasts. Their eyes looked at the faint shadow that appeared on Scarface's body. It looked like a tiger, but also like a dragon. Dragon Tiger Killing Fist? Isn't this the legendary unyielding and ferocious fist technique? Huayuti was shocked. This West Island trial really gathered the elites of all the islands. There were all kinds of experts. First, there was an expert from the Thousand Blades sect, and now there was a Dragon Tiger Killing Fist. If they were placed outside, they would all be ruthless characters who could make a name for themselves. Previously, she had thought that this guy's foundation was insufficient. Now it seemed that it was not so simple. Those who could successfully cultivate the Dragon Tiger Killing Fist were not easy to deal with. Unyielding and ferocious? When Lin Yi heard this, he couldn't help but become a bit more interested. He didn't know whether this legendary firm and fierce fist technique was better or worse than his mad flame thousand bursting fist. Before he finished speaking, the two of them had already clashed head-on. A loud rumbling sound was heard, and the scene that unfolded in front of them made everyone's jaws drop in shock. A total of 13 divine weapons were penetrated from head to tail by Scarface's fist. All the weapons were destroyed on the spot, and as for Duan Wuzong, he had been sent flying by the shockwave of his punch. For a moment it was impossible to find him, let alone know if he was dead or alive. The Dragon Tiger Slaughter Fist truly lived up to its reputation. The entire place was deathly silent. Everyone was looking at each other and constantly rubbing their eyes, afraid that they were seeing things. The Thousand Blades sect's Duan Wuzong. Such a powerful expert at the peak of the nascent soul realm was killed in seconds? Who else? Scarface had a sinister and terrifying smile on his face. His ferocious gaze slowly swept across the faces of everyone present. Everyone who was swept by his gaze. No matter how unruly they were before, they couldn't help but lower their heads, trembling like a quail. They didn't dare to look him in the eye. Ha 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 ha. A bunch of spineless cowards. Scarface let out a maniacal laugh. He casually sat on a huge rock behind him and looked at everyone's eyes. His eyes were filled with disdain. Since no one dares to cause trouble, then hurry up and do things according to the rules. If there's anyone who doesn't obey, then kill them. No one dared to make a sound. Duan Wuzong's previous example was right in front of them. Although there were many nascent soul realm experts here, those that could match Duan Wuzong's strength were few and far between. If they dared to stand out now, they would definitely die without a complete corpse. What should we do? Huayuti lightly pulled on Lin Yi's sleeves. Although her strength wasn't any weaker than Duan Wuzong, it wasn't that much stronger. Facing Scarface's Dragon Tiger Killing Fist, she would definitely end up the same way. What to do now was up to Lin Yi. Lin Yi was just about to speak when there was a sudden commotion behind him. Everyone turned their heads to look and saw two figures slowly approaching. Lin Yi took a look and his lips curled into a playful smile. It wasn't anyone else but two of his old acquaintances, Su Lingchong and Kong Mingming. Su Lingchong didn't have much to say. Other than the fact that his temperament was getting colder and weirder, there wasn't anything special about him. At this moment, the focus of everyone's attention was Kong Mingming. This flashy guy with an AI armor and a laser cannon had already attracted a lot of attention before the trial started. Now, he was naturally the center of attention. Oh, so many people. It's quite lively, isn't it? Kong Mingming swaggered over arrogantly. Previously, because he was too weak, he could only pretend to be a coward. Now that he had obtained a set of super high-tech equipment, his entire person was like a salted fish that had turned over a new leaf. He had obviously become arrogant. Other than Su Lingchong, his immediate superior, the others, including the nascent soul stage experts, were simply not in his eyes. No matter where he went, he had an arrogant attitude. Suddenly seeing such a weird-looking guy, Scarface couldn't help but be stunned. Of course, he didn't recognize the laser cannon and the AI armor, but based on his beast-like intuition, he faintly felt some fear in his heart. Scarface didn't take the initiative to speak, so the quails that were scared by him naturally didn't dare to make a sound. At this time, a bald man standing behind Scarface stood up. This was a nascent soul stage expert. Among their group, his strength was only below Scarface. "Hey, that weird-looking kid, you want to go to the 10,000-year Grand Canyon? Come, hand over the heavenly treasures first. Let me see if it's enough. Otherwise, you'd better scram back to where you came from. Otherwise, you'd better not die here." The bald man sneered. "Oh, I was wondering what it was. So it's a mountain king collecting tolls here." Kong Ming Ming laughed indifferently. He was now relying on his super high-tech equipment to look down on others. Why would he put this kind of trash in his eyes? Just as he was about to unleash his power in front of so many people, he suddenly glanced at Lin Yi and Hui Yudi from the corner of his eye. Chapter 4698. Hee, beauty, it looks like you're stuck here and can't get through, right? I've already told you, although the guy next to you looks decent, he's not reliable at all. He's a pretentious guy, but he's only good at acting tough when he has nothing to do. When it comes to important situations like this, he's useless. Kong Ming Ming proudly looked at Lin Yi with disdain. He couldn't wait to invite Hui Yudi again. "Beauty, come with me. As long as you follow me, you can go anywhere you want. No one can stop you." Lin Yi smiled speechlessly. Kong Ming Ming really didn't want to give up. He was rejected by Hui Yudi so many times, but he still had this idea. He was really persistent. "No need." Hui Yudi refused without thinking. Before, when she didn't know the depth of Lin Yi's strength, she didn't hesitate to choose to team up with Lin Yi, let alone now. Even if Lin Yi's unfathomable strength was not mentioned, she couldn't leave Lin Yi so easily just because of that embarrassing scene. It was even more impossible for her to follow Kong Ming Ming, who was obviously unreliable. Ugh. Kong Xiaoming couldn't hold it in anymore. It wasn't easy for him to show off, but why was this hot body of a beauty so clueless? Other than acting cool, which part of him was inferior to Lin Yi? No one can stop you. You're so arrogant. The bald man on the other side sneered. Your appearance is a bit strange, but it's a pity that you're just a joke. People don't even care about you, and you still have the nerve to brag here? What did you say? Kong Ming Ming was holding back a belly full of anger. When he heard that, he immediately turned to the bald man with an unfriendly expression. I said you're a joke. You're really strange. Where did so many idiots who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth come from? The bald man grinned hideously. After exchanging a glance with the scar-faced man, he immediately wanted to kill Kong Ming Ming. They were the only ones who had the final say in this territory. How could they allow this idiot to do whatever he wanted? However, just as he finished speaking, before he could even get into a stance, he suddenly felt a blinding white light flash past his eyes. At first, he did not feel anything strange, but then he felt an unbearable pain in his chest. The bald man looked down with difficulty and found a large hole in his chest. Bang! The bald man fell to the ground in a daze, although his breath hadn't been completely cut off. However, everyone knew that he couldn't hold on any longer. It was a miracle that he was still able to struggle at death's door for a while despite being so heavily injured. Everyone was shocked. Even Scarface, a ruthless expert at the peak of the early stage of the mysterious ascending realm, was looking at Kong Ming Ming with an unconcealable look of horror. He knew the bald man's strength. This guy had been with him for decades. His strength was definitely not weak among the experts at the peak of the nascent soul stage. At least, he was not weaker than Duan Wuzong from the Thousand Blades sect. However, he was killed in one move by this weird-looking kid. From beginning to end, he didn't even have a chance to make a move. Even he couldn't do this. What kind of god was this kid? True Chi manifestation? Someone around suddenly exclaimed. True Chi manifestation? Isn't that a magical power that only the legendary experts can do? That's not possible, right? Someone immediately questioned. Nonsense. Didn't you see it with your own eyes? Can it be fake? This is the legendary true chi manifestation. My goodness, we've met an expert this time. That person retorted. That's right. What kind of divine weapon is that? It can actually unleash true chi that can manifest. Isn't that too savage? The surrounding people sucked in a cold breath. Listening to the various discussions that these people made up on their own, Kang Ming waved his hand proudly. At the same time, he glanced at Lin Yi and Hui Yudi. True chi manifestation, this was a good gimmick. Looking at Kang Ming's proud attitude, Lin Yi was shocked. Listening to these discussions, he couldn't help but find it funny. True chi manifestation? If that was the case, his 5 elements murderous chi manifestation had indeed been achieved. However, he wasn't some legendary expert. He just comprehended this super martial skill that belonged to the 5 poison dragon from the remnant thoughts of the giant electric eel. As for Kang Ming, he really didn't want to say anything. However, although this wasn't Kang Ming's own ability, this laser cannon was really awesome. Even an expert at the peak of the nascent soul realm couldn't withstand one blow from him. This was a head-on battle. If this guy had the intention to hide and sneak up on people, the threat would be multiplied. No matter how fast he was, he wouldn't have a chance to react. It seemed that he really had to be careful in the future. I say, are all the people from the secular world so powerful? Is he also a personal disciple of some big shot in the North Island? Hui Yudi was stunned like everyone else. She really didn't think that Kang Ming was strong before, but now that she saw it with her own eyes, she couldn't help but believe it. This guy is useless. You don't have to pay attention to him. That's not his own strength at all. It's purely an external force. Lin Yi shook his head with a faint smile. External force? You mean his weird-shaped divine weapon? But the more powerful the divine weapon, the more powerful his own strength is to be able to control it, right? Hui Yudi was confused. For cultivators, it didn't mean that having a powerful divine weapon would be able to go against the natural order. They must have the strength to match it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to exert the power of the divine weapon at all. If they were not careful, they might even be backfired by the divine weapon and become the sacrifice of the sacrificial weapon. It's hard to explain in a few words. In short, that thing is a high-tech weapon in the secular world. No matter who gets that thing, as long as he knows how to operate it, he won't be bad. Even if he's just an ordinary person, he can kill a person at the peak of the nascent soul realm with one shot like he did. Lin Yi explained. Oh. It turns out to be a high-tech weapon. Hui Yudi nodded as if she understood. Suddenly, she added, this rich guy is really powerful. He even has this kind of thing. Puff. Lin Yi suddenly burst into laughter. It turned out that because of what he said, Kang Ming had already been equated with a rich guy in this girl's eyes. Kang Xiaoming was still trying to please her again and again. If he knew that he was being treated as a dumb ass, his expression would definitely be very interesting. Chapter 4699. How about it? Is there anyone else who wants to stop me? Kang Ming looked at Scarface maliciously. He knew that the other party was a peak early stage profound ascension expert, but he had just killed a nascent soul perfection expert. At this time, he was bursting with confidence. He absolutely believed that with the power of the laser cannon, that Scarface would only end up the same. Everyone's eyes turned to Scarface. Scarface's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Although his strength was the best in the field, after seeing the scene just now, he really felt a little guilty facing Kang Ming. With the speed and power that the laser cannon showed just now, he couldn't find any way to deal with it. He was not a speed-type expert. If they really fought, he probably wouldn't be much stronger than the bald man. The other party was a terrifying killing weapon formed from true chi. With his flesh and blood, he really couldn't block it. Under the gaze of everyone, Scarface hesitated for a moment. He could only clench his teeth and said, "Okay, I cherish heroes. Seeing that you are strong enough, you can go over." Although Thousand Blades Sex Duan Wuzong was also arrogant before, in his eyes, he was just a fart. A mere nascent soul perfection expert could be killed in seconds. But now, Kang Mingming had turned the tables and killed a nascent soul perfection expert under him. This kind of powerful deterrence was not something that Duan Wuzong could compare with. If they fought, it would be best if both sides suffered, so he couldn't help but be afraid. "Huh, at least you know what's good for you." Kang Xiaoming laughed arrogantly. He looked at Su Lingchong beside him and the two of them swaggered over. As expected, Scarface and the others were scared silly by the scene just now. These cruel and ruthless outlaws didn't even dare to move a muscle in front of Kang Xiaoming. Looking at the backs of Kang Mingming and Su Lingchong swaggered over, the rest of the people looked at each other. Their faces all had an envious expression. Sure enough, no matter where you go, strength is the most important. Being strong was really awesome. Even the Mountain King could only choose to retreat. At this moment, a man and a woman suddenly walked out of the restless crowd. Looking at their strength, the man was a nascent soul late-stage expert. The woman, on the other hand, was only at the early nascent soul stage. This man and woman followed the footsteps of Kang Mingming and Su Lingchong. They did not even look at the scarred man. They gave people the feeling that they were Kang Mingming's followers and wanted to fish in troubled waters. "Stop." Scarface's expression suddenly became stern. Being stared at by his malicious gaze, the man and woman who had been hoping to get lucky immediately paled. Their legs involuntarily trembled violently, and they almost knelt on the spot. What are you doing?" The man braced himself. He looked at Scarface with trepidation. "You want to go there? Where are the heavenly treasures? Hand them all over. Otherwise, you should know very well what will happen to you." Scarface sneered. This. The man and woman immediately broke out in cold sweat. They hadn't gained anything in the desert for the past few days, so they didn't have any heavenly treasures on them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken the risk to muddle through. How could they satisfy Scarface? Not willing to take it out? Still can't take it out? You want to muddle through if you can't take out the heavenly treasures? Do you think I'm running a charity, or do you really think I'm blind? Scarface looked at them up and down. His gaze finally fell on the woman, and there was a bit more lust and greed in it. This. The man and woman were so scared that they almost peed their pants. For a moment, they were in a dilemma. They fiercely slapped their own mouths in their heart. They were so hot-headed that they took the risk out of desperation. This was simply too unlucky. However, without the heavenly treasures, it's not like I can't let you pass. Hee. Scarface suddenly changed the topic. He pointed at the woman and said, "The woman beside you is quite good. I want her." The man was shocked, and the woman who Scarface had his eyes on turned pale. Although her figure and appearance could only be considered above average, this woman was quite good at dressing up. However, this woman was quite good at dressing herself up. She managed to create an 80% effect with her good looks. No wonder Scarface had his eyes on her. What? Hurry up and scram. Are you waiting for me to send you on your way? Scarface scolded fiercely. The man's face couldn't help turning green and white. He looked at his female companion who was looking at him with a pleading face, and then looked at the ferocious Scarface. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "Well, a man doesn't need to worry about not having a wife. I'll give this woman to you as a toll fee." After that, regardless of the desperate wailing of his female companion and the discussion of the people present, the man turned his head and walked away. Soon, he disappeared into the entrance of the 10,000 Years Grand Canyon. Ha ha ha, you're really blind to follow this kind of scum. Well, you don't look like a native of West Island. I haven't eaten meat for decades. I'm lucky today. Scarface laughed. Although most of the people in the trial of West Island were women, he also knew that he didn't dare to do anything to them under normal circumstances. After all, this was the base camp of West Island. If the news really leaked out, the high-level officials of West Island would definitely have a way to kill him, and that would be a big loss. But now that this woman was not a disciple of West Island, there was nothing to be afraid of. When it came to women, the last time he touched a woman was a few decades ago. At that time, there happened to be a female cultivator who couldn't get out. Eventually, she fell into his hands. As a result, he and his underlings ravaged her to death. In a burst of exclamations from the crowd, accompanied by the helpless scream of the female cultivator, Scarface actually stripped her clothes in front of so many people and was about to eat her on the spot. Beast! Huayuti was also scared to the point that her beautiful face turned pale. She was a clean girl and had never seen such a scene. She quickly covered her eyes and didn't dare to look again. Seeing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. Originally, he also thought that since Kang Ming had set a precedent, Scarface's prestige had been greatly reduced. Even if he didn't hand over the heaven materials and earth treasures, he should be able to pass. But now it seemed that he definitely couldn't. If he was the same as this man and woman, then Scarface would definitely ask him for Huayuti. No matter how he looked at it, even if she was wearing a veil, Huayuti's beauty was at least 10 times better than the female cultivator in the field. Even a normal man would not let her go, not to mention Scarface and his group of hungry desperados. It seemed that he had to do something today. Lin Yi shook his head lightly. Although Scarface was not a difficult character in his eyes, there were so many people present, and he didn't want to expose his strength in public. But now that the situation had developed to this point, it was probably unrealistic to want to pass in a low profile. Chapter 4700. The tone of his voice carried an obvious hint of fear. Lin Yi looked over and saw that it was actually Kang Ming who had turned back. It turned out that after he left with Su Lingchong, he did not go far, but instead waited at the entrance of the 10,000-year Grand Canyon. Whoosh! Lin Yi thought for a moment and understood. This guy purposely stayed here and did not leave. He was most likely waiting to see Lin Yi make a fool of himself. Perhaps he still had not given up on Huayuti. At this moment, Kang Ming had suddenly returned. Scarface thought that he had taken a fancy to this female cultivator, and his heart suddenly became nervous. If this brat opened his mouth and wanted her, then what should he do? Should he fight or not? If he fought, the best result would be that both sides would be injured. At the very least, he would not be able to avoid the opponent's true chi technique. Perhaps he might not even be able to injure both sides. The result could be imagined. But if he did not fight, then wouldn't he lose all his prestige after retreating under the watchful eyes of so many people? How would he be able to collect the toll later? Just as Scarface was hesitating, Kang Xiaoming didn't even look at him. He walked right past him and said lightly, "Don't be nervous, this kind of ordinary makeup doesn't enter my eyes." Scarface was still in a daze, but Kang Xiaoming didn't even look at him. Of course, he would not have nothing better to do. In a situation where the other party had already retreated, he still took the initiative to provoke Scarface. He still wanted to keep this guy to humiliate Lin Yi, and was waiting to see a good joke. How could he bear to deal with Scarface at this time? This was a rare watchdog. Hearing Kang Ming's disdainful tone, Scarface's mouth involuntarily twitched. Although he was somewhat glad, when he looked at this female cultivator who had been stripped naked in front of everyone, he immediately lost his previous libido. After cursing, he casually threw the female cultivator to the side. The eyes of his subordinates immediately lit up, and they laughed strangely as they rushed forward, noisily dragging the female cultivator to an unknown place. Under the watchful eyes of everyone. Kang Xiaoming walked up to Huiyuti with large strides. He looked at Lin Yi with disdain, and then turned to Huiyuti with a face full of politeness. Beauty, you saw what happened just now. If you come with me, that scar face won't dare touch a single hair on your body. But if you follow this pretentious old man, then you'll end up in a terrible state. With the previous example in front of you, anyone with a bit of wisdom would know what to do. Beauty, what do you say? I said it very clearly. I won't form a team with you. You should just give up on it. Huiyuti refused again without saying anything. Her tone was obviously impatient, and she couldn't help but mutter in her heart, is there something wrong with this guy's head? I said it so many times, but he still asks. However, at the same time, Huiyuti glanced at her opponent's high-tech equipment. She couldn't help but feel envious. If only she had something like that. Blast that scar-faced beast into the air. It seems like a beauty's judgment of people is really bad. I already said that this guy is just a pretentious leader who looks good but is useless, yet you still trust him so much. Does he really think he has that kind of strength? Kang Mingming's face darkened. He sneered at the two of them and said, in that case, I won't say anything. You can stay here with this pretentious leader. You can leave now. Huiyuti pouted. For a moment, she didn't know how to refute. After all, the scar-faced man on the other side was indeed ferocious, whether it was her or Lin Yi. However, if he wanted to obtain the Thunder Xian Ratan, he had to pass through the 10,000 Years Great Canyon. Now, he could not even enter the 10,000 Years Great Canyon. What could he do? Huiyuti couldn't help but look at Lin Yi for help. However, she saw Lin Yi look at the arrogant Kang Mingming, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. Who says we can't win? Let's go, let's go. The monkey show is over. It's quite interesting. After saying that, Lin Yi directly walked forward. His expression was leisurely and indifferent. He did not put the Mountain King in front of him in his eyes. The people beside him couldn't help but look at each other. What day was it today? All kinds of great gods appeared. Another person with a shocking tone. Huiyuti saw this and laughed. After glancing at Kang Mingming, she hurriedly followed Lin Yi's footsteps. Since Lin Yi was so confident, it meant that he could deal with that scar-faced man. What was there to worry about? Seeing that Lin Yi and Huiyuti were getting closer and closer to him with a condescending attitude, the scar-faced man suddenly flew into a rage. He was the strongest early-stage profound ascension expert present. Previously, with the appearance of a strange freak like Kang Mingming, he was afraid to provoke him. That was fine. After all, it wouldn't be a big deal. At most, it would damage some prestige. However, after that, not only did someone want to take advantage of the situation, there was actually someone who dared to say that he was going to leave after watching the show. Could it be that he, a dignified expert at the peak of the early stage of profound ascension, was just a monkey show in his eyes? Or was it that he was simply a monkey being played? Brat, I want the beauty beside you. Hurry up and hand her over. The scar-faced man strode in front of Lin Yi and Huiyuti. As he spoke with a face full of lust, he reached out his hand to touch Huiyuti's body. Only now did he realize that this veiled woman was actually a rare beauty in this world. Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, Lin Yi in front of him had already slapped him without saying a word. The scar-faced man saw this and immediately laughed in anger. Who did this brat think he was? It would be fine if he used all his strength to launch a sneak attack, but he actually wanted to slap him in front of everyone. Was this guy's brain a pile of shit? The scar-faced man subconsciously wanted to slap back with a sinister smile. His body flickered with the shadow of a dragon and tiger. He had already used the overbearing and fierce dragon-tiger killing fist. It was obvious that he wanted to take Lin Yi's head to establish his prestige. The power of the dragon-tiger killing fist was unquestionable. However, before the scar-faced man could completely attack, Lin Yi had already slapped him in the face. There was also a soul-stirring dragon roar. It was unknown when Lin Yi's hand had condensed a 5 elements killing chi. Pa! Accompanied by a crisp sound of flesh, the huge body of the scar-faced man was suddenly like a kite with a broken string. He was slapped away uncontrollably, directly flying more than 10 feet away. He couldn't get up for a long time. The whole audience sucked in a breath of cold air. Everyone looked at Lin Yi with incomparable shock and horror. They were simply on the verge of worshipping him. Chapter 4701. He personally slapped Scarface away, and he did it in such an understated manner. With just one slap, he sent a person flying. What does this mean? Even if everyone was already dumbfounded, they could tell that this guy's strength was far above Scarface. Profound Ascension Middle Stage. Peak Profound Ascension Middle Stage. Or even stronger than this? This time, the West Island trial was indeed a place where the elites of all the islands were gathered. The various gods that emerged were really ruthless. However, this was obviously a mystic ascending stage master. How did he get in here? It couldn't be like Scarface, who was trapped here during the trial, right? Many people had already noticed Lin Yi before. This guy was clearly teleported in with them. Not only was everyone dumbfounded, even Hui Yuti, who was standing behind Lin Yi, couldn't help but cover her mouth, and her eyes were full of incredible shock. Even though she already knew that Lin Yi was unfathomable before this, and she had already overestimated Lin Yi's strength, she was still stunned at this time. Lin Yi was clearly only at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. How could he casually slap a peak of the early profound ascension stage? What was wrong with this world? On the other side, after Scarface was slapped away, he groaned on the ground for a long time before he dug himself out of the sunken ground. The side of his cheek that was slapped was swollen high, and it was as swollen as a basketball. Just a moment ago, he was still ferocious and powerful, but in the blink of an eye, he fell into such a sorry state. This huge contrast was really a little unacceptable. Scarface looked at Lin Yi with trepidation. When he saw Lin Yi's gaze sweeping over, he quickly shrank his head and pretended to be a grandson. Although he was very unwilling in his heart, since he was promoted to the profound ascension stage, he had never suffered such humiliation. This was simply unbearable. However, he was not stupid. He knew that the other party could send him flying with a casual slap. If they really wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be difficult at all. After being slapped in the face, Lin Fan was stunned. Scarface actually acted like a coward in front of everyone. This guy was a bit more tactful than Lin Yi expected. However, this wasn't a bad thing. Lin Yi didn't have any intention of killing him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have just slapped him lightly, but would have used his full strength. Although Scarface was indeed an abominable person, with all the atrocious crimes he had committed, no matter how many times he was killed, he deserved to die. However, Lin Yi had no intention of acting for the will of heaven. The cultivation world was a dog-eat-dog world. As long as he did not provoke Lin Yi, no matter what Scarface did, it had nothing to do with him. And the reason why he deliberately spared Scarface's life was actually because he had a deep consideration. The reason was very simple. Whether or not Scarface, that fiendish demon, was present at the door made no difference to him. But to the other trial challengers present, the difference was enormous. It was directly related to whether or not they could enter the 10,000-year Great Canyon. Although the Thunder Mystic Vine was not in the 10,000-year Great Canyon, if too many people entered, it might be a bad thing. But if he let too many people in, things might go awry. He didn't want to leave any hidden dangers for himself at this time. Therefore, he simply spared Scarface's life and let him continue to guard the door here to scare off the other cultivators. Kong Ming Ming looked at Lin Yi with a face full of resentment. This time, he had used the laser cannon with great difficulty to show off. In the end, this guy stole the limelight again. Was there any fucking justice in this world? He really couldn't swallow this anger. Kang Mingming angrily wanted to ridicule Lin Yi again. However, this time, before he could speak, Su Lingchong suddenly kicked him from behind. He said impatiently, "Hurry up and get down to business. If you don't want to do it, then take off your armor." Ever since this operation plan was decided, this young Master Su had not had much of a presence. From the beginning to the end, it was basically Kang Mingming who took the lead. But along the way, he more or less understood how to use this thing, and he was looking for a chance to try it. If Kang Mingming was not reliable, Su Lingchong could destroy him in minutes. At worst, he would do it himself. Even if he could not marry Ning Xuefei, the princess of West Island, in the end, as long as he could ruin Lin Yi's plan, he would have achieved his goal. Everything else could be negotiated. Yes, please calm down, young Master Su. Kang Mingming's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he quickly bowed his head to admit his mistake. He could show off in front of others, but he would not dare to talk back in front of his immediate superior even if he had 10 guts. That would kill him. He, Kang Mingming, was not a fool. After glancing at Lin Yi fiercely, Kang Ming had to restrain his unwillingness in his heart. He did not dare to stay any longer and carefully followed Su Lingchong away. What the hell are these two guys doing? Lin Yi looked at the backs of Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming, and thoughtfully pinched his chin. Intuition told him that there must be a reason for these two to appear here, but he could not think of any clues at the moment. Maybe they were just like the others, simply to collect treasures in the 10,000 Years Grand Canyon? What are you thinking about? Hui Yudi suddenly patted Lin Yi's back. After suppressing the shock in her heart, Lin Yi was still the same Lin Yi. With such a powerful teammate, she was already very confident about getting the Thunder Xian Vine this time. At this moment, she was even a little impatient. "Oh, nothing." Lin Yi shook his head and turned his head to look at the scarred man who had just raised his head. The scarred man suddenly shivered again and immediately buried his head again, which was the complete opposite of his previous ferocious demeanor. Lin Yi could not help but laugh in his heart. After this guy suffered, it seemed that he was ready to pretend to be a grandson in front of him until the end. As a dignified early-stage profound ascension expert, he was quite tactful. No longer paying attention to the scarred man, Lin Yi immediately prepared to bring Hui Yudi to the 10,000 Years Grand Canyon. However, at the last moment when he turned his head, he suddenly caught a glimpse of two familiar figures, Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo. It seemed that the two of them had just arrived and were about to find someone to inquire about the situation. At this time, they also happened to see Lin Yi and Hui Yudi, and their faces immediately revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. "Come, you two come with me." Lin Yi waved at the two of them from afar. Of course, Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo would not refuse. Although they had not fully understood the situation, they knew from the atmosphere that this place was definitely not so easy to pass. Under the envious gazes of the others, Qi Wenhan and Hui Yudi quickly walked towards Lin Yi, while the scarred man and his group of followers, who were blocking between them and Lin Yi, hurriedly got out of the way as if they had seen a ghost, for fear of accidentally provoking Lin Yi. Chapter 4702. If this fiend was forced to make a move again, then they would not even know how they died. Not to mention that Scarface, a peak early-stage profound ascension expert, was sent flying with one move. Even Kang Mingming, who looked equally ferocious and terrifying, did not dare to challenge Lin Yi, and could only run away with his tail between his legs. This scene had completely dispelled everyone's thoughts of resistance. They did not know that Su Lingchong was impatient just now, and thought that he was purely afraid. Even if these followers were desperados, no one was willing to become cannon fodder, especially in this kind of situation where there was no hope. Even the boss Scarface could only pretend to be a grandson, so these subordinates naturally had to pretend even more, or else they would die in vain. After bringing Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo, Lin Yi glanced at everyone one last time, and then led the way into the 10,000-year Great Canyon under respectful gazes. As soon as Lin Yi and the others left, there were immediately people who wanted to follow them in. After all, Scarface had suffered a great loss this time, and could only pretend to be a grandson. For the others, there was no longer any deterrence to speak of. However, before that person could even walk halfway, Scarface abruptly smashed over with a dragon tiger slaughter fist, and it blasted that person to the point not even a trace of him remained on the spot. Scarface once again recovered his ferocious and terrifying appearance, and his methods were so brutal and ruthless that it caused the others to be unable to help but retreat in unison while feeling extremely astounded. I will leave a sentence here: either hand over enough heavenly treasures before entering, or wait for you to come back from inside, hand over half of your gains. You can choose one of the two methods. Don't blame me for not saying the ugly words first. Those who want to take advantage of the chaos to get away with it will die. Scarface roared with a sinister expression. According to his original plan, he was prepared to go back and forth according to the market, extorting these people once when they entered, and extorting them again when they were released. Or if the situation was good, he would simply kill them and take their treasures. This was a true business with no capital. But now he had suffered losses one after another. Especially after Lin Yi slapped him in the face, he'd completely wiped out the last bit of intimidation he had. With so many people glaring at him, if he didn't quickly set the tone, it would cause big trouble. Therefore, he had no choice but to take a step back and not force these people into a dead end. Humans were all like this. Once they had no other choice, they might fight to the death against a common enemy. However, once they were given hope, this resistance would immediately vanish. Even if there were one or two hotheads, at least most people would not take the risk out of desperation. Sure enough, Scarface's actions allowed him to regain control of the situation that had gone out of control. After the crowd heard his words, some of them thought about it for a moment before nodding in agreement. The first choice was obviously a trap, but the second choice wasn't impossible. Losing half of their forces was much better than searching for a needle in a haystack in the desert. There was a first one. Very quickly, there was a second and a third. Many people accepted Scarface's suggestion on the spot. Of course, there were also some people who felt it was unreliable after thinking about it. They turned around and left unwillingly. The 10,000-year canyon was good, but who knew if Scarface would change his mind and go back on his words. After passing through the small oasis, there was a huge and majestic canyon in front of them. An ancient and austere aura greeted them, causing them to tremble from the depths of their souls. This is the 10,000-year canyon. It looks like a place of dragons and tigers. There should be a lot of heavenly treasures here. Lin Yi looked at the scene in front of him and nodded. Not all parts of the canyon were covered with oases. Although this huge canyon wasn't completely covered with oases, all kinds of plants could be seen everywhere. It was far more lively than the desert outside. Moreover, the spiritual energy was also quite abundant, making people feel refreshed. Yes. But it's still 100 times more dangerous than the outside. You have to be careful with every step, or you'll die. Huiyidi reminded them. And, the benefits are always proportional to the risks. Brother Qi, Miss Xia, you have to be careful. Don't just focus on your sweet feelings. Lin Yi looked at the two mischievously. Being teased like this, Qi Wenhan and Xia Luolua's faces immediately turned red. After the previous storm, their relationship had improved by leaps and bounds. Right now, they were even holding hands. It was obvious that the good deed had been accomplished. Brother Ling, you guys have to be careful too. We'll be leaving first. Qi Wenhan and Xia Luoluo secretly looked at each other, then immediately said goodbye to Lin Yi. The two of them were at a time when their relationship was rapidly heating up. They only had eyes for each other, and couldn't wait to continue their world together. Okay, when you guys come back, if that Scarface is still obstructing you, then wait for me here. Lin Yi smiled. Although he said this, he didn't think that Scarface was an idiot. Based on the style he had displayed before, he would eat anything that he could, and wouldn't let go until the bones were completely crushed. But if he met someone he couldn't handle, he would be very tactful, and would directly act like a coward, without the slightest bit of resistance. From a certain point of view, this Scarface could be considered a person who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. Of course, to put it in another way, it would be called bullying the weak and fearing the strong. I understand. Brother Chi, Miss Hua, I'll see you later. Chi Wenhan cupped his hands towards the two of them, then immediately turned around and left with Xia Luoluo. After watching the two of them leave, Lin Yi turned to look at Hui Yudi and said, "Where do we go next? Is there a shortest route?" Of course there is. Although it's a canyon that leads to the end, this 10,000-year canyon is several hundred miles wide, and there are many places that you absolutely can't step into. If you don't set a good route, you'll have to take many wrong turns, and it's also very dangerous. Hui Yudi said. Okay, then where do we go now? Lin Yi asked. Over there. Hui Yudi pointed to the right, and suddenly became excited. She said with a face full of happiness, "There's a spring there, I want to take a good bath." Lin Yi was speechless. Although it was a bit of a waste of time, she was still a girl, and she always had some privileges. After being covered in dust for so long, it was normal for her to want to take a bath. He could only nod and say, "Then let's go there. But time is limited, don't take too long." Got it. Hui Yudi exclaimed with joy. Then like a fairy, she cheered and flew in the direction of the spring. Chapter 4703. Sure enough, Hui Yudi quickly found a clear spring behind the towering rock in front of her. The spring water was extremely clear and pure, and it was overflowing with spiritual energy. Even drinking it would make one feel refreshed, not to mention jumping into it to take a bath. It was definitely a rare enjoyment in the world. Hui Yudi wanted to jump in impatiently, but when she turned around and saw Lin Yi, she immediately blushed and said shyly, You're not allowed to peek. I'll just guard here, alright? I won't look even if you beat me to death." Lin Yi spread his hands and turned around to lean against the big rock. Anyway, with the big rock in the way, he wouldn't be able to see it even if he wanted to. "You won't look even if you beat me to death? Am I that bad?" Hui Yudi muttered with some dissatisfaction. Pooh. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What's going on with this girl? Does she want me to look or not? Hui Yudi muttered a few words in a low voice. Seeing that Lin Yi really didn't move, she turned around and walked towards the spring. Her expression seemed to be a little relieved, but also a little disappointed. No one knew what she was thinking in her mind. But before she actually walked in, there was a sudden commotion in the distance. Impressively, some of the other challengers who came later also discovered the spring here, and couldn't help but gather here. Hui Yudi, who was originally full of joy, suddenly wanted to cry but had no tears. Most of these people were male cultivators, and she was a girl. With so many people coming at once, how could she take a bath? It wasn't easy for her to find a spring like this, and her heart was filled with reluctance. But if she didn't leave, she wouldn't be able to bathe here. Hui Yudi was in a dilemma, and could only look at Lin Yi pitifully. Seeing this, Lin Yi smiled slightly and gave her a reassuring look. Then, he looked at the noisy newcomers with a cold gaze. His tone was indifferent as he said, "I'm taking this place." When everyone heard this, they looked at each other before turning around and leaving without any hesitation. They didn't hesitate at all. Of course, the clear spring water made people happy, but compared to their lives, this little bit of happiness was nothing. Lin Yi was a ferocious god that could even send a peak early stage profound ascension expert flying with a slap. Killing them was as easy as moving a finger. Who would dare to provoke such a ruthless person? In the blink of an eye. This group of people also fled for their lives. Hui Yudi saw this scene and immediately pursed her lips into a smile. Seeing how overbearing Lin Yi was, she didn't know why, but she was actually very happy in her heart. Although they were both morning geniuses, she was completely different from Yao Jieli. She was definitely not a domineering person. However, it was nice to enjoy the feeling of being domineering occasionally, especially at a time like this. Go wash it. With me here, no one will dare to come over. Lin Yi said faintly. The boulder behind him couldn't block the entire spring, but it could block a large part of it. Furthermore, there was a depression inside that Huiyuti could hide in. This way, she wouldn't have to worry about being seen. Oh. Huiyuti blushed and nodded. She immediately waded through the shallow spring water. She tiptoed and turned behind the rock. As for Lin Yi, he was like a door god, standing there with his arms crossed. The other challengers that came one after another looked from afar. Needless to say, they didn't dare to come over. This kind of ruthless person should be kept as far away as possible. They must not provoke him. Otherwise, no matter how many lives they had, it wouldn't be enough to kill them. Even if there were a few courageous people who wanted to come over to take a look, with a glance from Lin Yi, they immediately didn't dare to move. They turned and ran as if they were running for their lives, not daring to have the slightest thought. This was the effect that Lin Yi wanted. He didn't have the mood to waste time with these irrelevant people. While standing guard outside for Huiyuti, he simply sat down and cultivated. After all, a woman's bath was always very troublesome. He didn't know how long it would take. As long as he constantly released his divine sense, he wouldn't have to worry about any accidents. After an unknown amount of time, Lin Yi suddenly heard Huiyuti call his name. He couldn't help but ask, "What's the matter?" Do you have clothes?" Huiyuti asked hesitantly. "Clothes? What clothes?" Lin Yi was somewhat puzzled. It's my clothes that haven't been washed yet. I'm asking if you have any clothes that I can wear." Huiyuti's tone was unexpectedly a bit coquettish. After she reacted, her cheeks couldn't help but turn red. Except for her master, who was both a master and a mother, she had never used this tone to speak to outsiders. Lin Yi was speechless. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he helplessly shook his head and said, "This is the wilderness. Where can I find clothes that you can wear? Use your true qi to dry them." Huiyuti hesitated for a moment, and then said in a weak tone, "This is the 10,000-year Grand Canyon. I can't waste my energy on this kind of thing. I saw that you can casually take out pastries, so I wanted to ask if you have any clothes from the secular world, N? What kind of logic is this?" Lin Yi froze at the question. If she could take out pastries, she could take out clothes, and clothes from the common world. This girl's logic was truly unimaginable, making it impossible to follow up on her lies. But thinking about it, of course, he didn't have ancient clothes for the women of Heaven's Stage Island, but he did have clothes from the secular world. Before he left the secular world, Wu Chintian prepared a lot of things for him, including some new clothes for his female friends on Heaven's Stage Island. There were all kinds of styles, and even if he used them to open a women's clothing store, it wouldn't be a problem. Lin Yi roughly considered the figures of the women, and after thinking about it, he finally felt that although this girl's figure was a little hotter than Tian Chan's, it was roughly the same. So he buried his head in the jade space for a while and finally found a set of denim sportswear. "There really is something that you can wear, but how do I give it to you?" Lin Yi asked. "Why don't you throw it over?" Huiyuti suggested. "Throw it over? Then wouldn't it be thrown into the water?" Lin Yi shook his head speechlessly. Then. Huiyuti was obviously a little hesitant, but in the end, she gritted her teeth and said, "Why don't you come over and put it on the side?" "I go over?" Lin Yi was stunned. This girl was so open, and she would let him in when she was bathing? It didn't seem like it. After interacting with her for the past few days, although she was a little unpredictable, and they had that kind of awkward and ambiguous encounter before, overall, he felt that this girl was quite conservative. Even if she didn't view the barrier between men and women as more important than her life, it was definitely not dispensable. Chapter 4704. Alright then. Since she had already said so, Lin Yi, as a man, of course, had nothing to be shy about. He immediately took the clothes and walked in. Bypassing the rock, this was the first time he saw the full view of the spring. It was clear and slightly cool, with a layer of white mist. It gave off the feeling of a paradise on earth. At this moment, Huiyuti was curled up in the depression behind the rock. Her whole body was carefully curled up in the water, leaving only her head above the water. She looked at Lin Yi with a blushing face. Because she was bathing, Huiyuti was naturally not wearing a veil at this moment. This was the first time Lin Yi saw her face. Even though he was used to seeing stunning beauties around him, at this moment, he couldn't help but feel as if he was struck by lightning when he suddenly saw this beautiful face. There were only 8 words left in his mind: white as jade, beautiful and flawless. No wonder this chick had to wear a veil. Otherwise, with her appearance, coupled with that seductive and hot body, she would definitely have endless troubles when she came out to train. She could be snatched away at any moment to be the wife of a bandit. Looking at this scene in front of him, Lin Yi couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Her appearance was only one of the reasons why he was stunned, but the more seductive part was still below. Although Huiyuti's whole body was hidden under the water, the spring water was after all so clear that the bottom could be seen. Without the layer of white mist above, nothing could be hidden at all. However, even with this layer of mist, with Lin Yi's eyesight, he could still vaguely see some of the scenery under the water. If Huiyuti didn't happen to be hiding in the depression of the rock, and the lower half of her body was blocked by the rock, Lin Yi even suspected that he would have a nosebleed. In fact, at this moment, just looking at Huiyuti's pure and beautiful face and the creamy white skin on her neck, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little unable to control himself. Especially the indistinct scene below the neck, it gave people endless imagination. If it was any other man with poor willpower, he would have probably jumped down in a fit of beastly rage. Huh? What clothes are these? Huiyuti was a little shy, especially when Lin Yi came in. She almost wanted to hide, but when she saw the clothes in Lin Yi's hands, his eyes immediately lit up. Women had always been very sensitive to things like clothes. Even if she had never seen clothes from the secular world, she could still easily distinguish between good and bad. You'll know when you put it on. Lin Yi smiled a little unnaturally. Out of a man's instinctive physiological reaction, he couldn't act naturally in this situation at all. After putting the clothes in his hands on the stone beside him, he immediately retreated. Oh. Huiyuti's eyes lit up as she looked at the set of denim sportswear. She didn't wait for Lin Yi to completely exit before she eagerly drilled out of the water and rushed over like a little girl. In that instant, it was a beautiful scene of hibiscus emerging from clear water. This caused Lin Yi to stagger, and his entire person was stunned on the spot. It was only when Huiyuti herself reacted that Lin Yi hurriedly retreated with a blushing face. His mind was muddled, and it was filled with the scene from a moment ago. Shaking his head to get rid of the distracting thoughts lingering in his mind, Lin Yi waited outside for a long time before he heard the sound of Huiyuti coming out of the water. This was followed by the rustling sound of clothes, which made Lin Yi couldn't help but let his imagination run wild again. After all, the scene from a moment ago was really lingering in his mind. After a while, when Lin Yi involuntarily went astray, a beautiful and refined figure suddenly appeared in front of him. An elegant and refined figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It was Huiyuti, who had just finished changing her clothes. What? You don't recognize me? Seeing that Lin Yi was staring at her, Huiyuti couldn't help but whisper with a blushing face, but she didn't know why she felt a little happy in her heart. She even deliberately turned around in front of Lin Yi, pursed her lips and asked, "Do I look good in this?" "Yes." Lin Yi nodded. Huiyuti's beauty was extremely rare. Previously, she was wearing an ancient costume and a veil. Her whole body was covered tightly from head to toe, but it still gave people a very attractive aesthetic feeling. However, now that she had changed into a denim sportswear, it outlined her beautiful figure even more exquisite and well-proportioned. Her very slim figure was 120% seductive. Coupled with her youthful and beautiful face, she was simply a very beautiful woman in the secular world. To be honest, looking at the current Huiyuti, Lin Yi couldn't help but have a feeling that it was a lifetime ago. Since coming to Heaven Stage Island, he had never seen a beauty dressed like this. Even Han Jingjing and the others also wore ancient costumes when in Rome. He didn't expect to experience this long-lost feeling from this East Continent chick. It had to be said that this chick was really in tune with the secular world. At least if she wore this dress and walked around in the secular world, no one would be able to see through her origins. They would only think that she was born and raised in the secular world. Looking at Lin Yi's expression of being unable to extricate himself, Huiyuti was not angry. Instead, she was shy and a little proud. Along the way, Lin Yi didn't show the slightest bit of covetousness, which made her a little lacking in self-confidence. But now she finally regained her self-confidence. It seemed that she was not completely unattractive to this guy. "Hey, do you want to go in and take a bath?" Huiyuti asked with her mouth pouting. "Oh, there's no need." Lin Yi heard her words and shook his head faintly. His mind suddenly regained its clarity. When he looked at Huiyuti again, his gaze no longer had the lust from before. Taking a bath was like eating. It was not necessary for high-level practitioners. It could only be regarded as a natural habit. Even after a few days of travel in the desert, Lin Yi could use his qi to clean himself with just a thought. Only a girl like Huiyuti, who was obsessed with cleanliness, would want to take a bath. Huiyuti pouted and looked at Lin Yi up and down with a strange look. There seemed to be a bit of regret in her eyes. Lin Yi was stunned by her look. He didn't know what this chick was thinking in her head. He could only say, "Let's get ready to go." "Don't you plan to wear a veil?" Huiyuti was startled. Only then did she remember that she didn't wear a veil. Her cheeks instantly turned bright red. Didn't that mean that her appearance was clearly seen by the other party? Looking at Huiyuti hurriedly putting on a veil, Lin Yi couldn't help but be speechless. It turned out that this chick didn't realize this from the beginning to the end. Once again on the road, the atmosphere between the two of them became a little strange for some reason. It was just like after the awkward scene before. Huiyuti's face was red and she lowered her head in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking about. In any case, she was silent and didn't say a word. Chapter 4705. He could see that she was a little out of sorts, and the 10,000-year canyon was obviously different from the desert outside. It was full of vitality, which often meant danger, and he had to be on guard. Just like the humanoid vine, it might look like an ordinary vine on the outside, but it would become a ferocious and terrifying monster in this place. Every step here had to be careful, and it was very dangerous to be distracted like Huiyuti. But it was also thanks to Lin Yi keeping an eye on them from behind, noticing the slightest movement. They were able to avoid those hidden threats a couple of times. Otherwise, with Huiyuti's current confused state, even if she was lucky enough not to die, she would have wasted a lot of time. Although there might not be no gains, at least there would be no Thunder Xian Vine. Walking behind Huiyuti, facing such a seductive beauty, any man would unconsciously glance at her, and Lin Yi was no exception. He thought that after Huiyuti changed into such a sexy denim sportswear, she would attract some unnecessary trouble. After all, there were countless perverts like Kong Mingming. However, to his surprise, perhaps because the route he had chosen was relatively remote, he did not encounter anyone along the way. It was rare for him to meet one or two people, but when they saw a demon like him, they instinctively hid far away. Who would dare to come up and cause trouble? After walking like this for about 2 hours, a towering mountain suddenly appeared in front of them. Lin Yi was shocked. He thought that the 10,000-year canyon was a flat plain. He did not expect there to be a mountain in the canyon. Although it could not be compared to the mountains on both sides of the canyon, the pressure of the mountain in front of them was not small. It almost occupied most of the 10,000-year canyon, leaving only a narrow path on the left. Huiyuti took out the map and looked at it. Without saying anything, she walked in the direction of the narrow path on the left. It seemed that she was going to go around the mountain in front of them. However, Lin Yi did not move. Suddenly, he stopped and asked thoughtfully, "What is that?" "Ah." Huiyuti was stunned. She turned around and saw Lin Yi staring at the mountain on the right. Her expression tightened and she said, "That is Tiandao Mountain." Tiandao Mountain? Lin Yi looked into the distance. He didn't know why, but there was an inexplicable obsession in his mind that made him want to get closer, as if something was calling him. He immediately said, "Let's go and take a look." "No. Don't go." Huiyuti hurriedly cried out in alarm. What happened? Lin Yi looked at her reaction with a strange expression. He didn't know why this girl had been silent the whole way, but why was she so excited when she heard that they were going to Heavenly Dao Mountain? "I can't go." "You must not go." Huiyuti shook her head in horror. She looked at Lin Yi with pleading eyes and said, "Listen to me, let's go around the small path on the left, okay? Although it's also very dangerous, and we'll definitely encounter some terrifying existences on the way, it's much safer than going to Tiandao Mountain." "Why?" Lin Yi frowned slightly. The obsession in the unseen world became stronger and stronger. Although he could still restrain it with his willpower, if it were someone else, they would not be able to control it. Perhaps they would have already walked over involuntarily. Tiandao Mountain is the only place that Master warned me not to go near. Huiyuti looked at Tiandao Mountain in the distance with a serious expression and said slowly, "You also know that this is the primordial battlefield. Then do you know where the core of the trial is?" "Oh. Could it be Tiandao Mountain?" Lin Yi's eyelid twitched. "That's right, Tiandao Mountain is the core of the primordial battlefield. Legend has it that the strongest existences of the primordial era fought here. As for the other places, they are at most the stands of the primordial battlefield." Huiyuti's face was filled with awe. She paused and said, "Do you know how this 10,000-year canyon came to be?" "How did it come to be?" Lin Yi asked. "Originally, this place was level with the outside world, and there was no canyon at all. However, after an earth-shattering battle, the entire foundation below was smashed and collapsed, resulting in the 10,000-year canyon. Only the Tiandao Mountain under the feet of those peak existences was not directly smashed because it was protected by their aura. Instead, it sank together and became what it is today. Of course, this is only a legend. Whether it is true or not, there is no way to verify it," Huiyuti said. "If it is true, then the people who fought here are really extraordinary." Lin Yi looked at the surrounding 10,000-year canyon and exclaimed. Carefully sensing it, he could feel the remnant aura of the array that was everywhere. This aura was so ancient that it had merged with the surrounding heaven and earth. Ordinary people would not be able to detect it at all. It was very likely that it was passed down from the primordial era. For a mere remnant aura to remain here, it was evident how powerful the array was. However, even with the protection of such a powerful array, this place was still blasted into the 10,000-year canyon. The strength of the instigators was evident. However, after listening to Huiyuti, not only did Lin Yi not have any intention of retreating, but he also wanted to go to Tiandao Mountain to take a look. This was the core of the trial, the primordial land. If he just went around like this, wouldn't it be too regretful? Looking at Lin Yi's eager expression, Huiyuti's eyes became more and more worried. She suddenly asked, "Is it because you really want to go over and take a look? It seems like something is attracting you." "How do you know?" Lin Yi was shocked. "It's not only you. According to the information my master got from the higher-ups of West Island, in fact, many people will be like this when they arrive here. They will unconsciously get closer to Tiandao Mountain. Every time the trial opens, many people will go there. However, after that, most people never return." Huiyuti looked at Tiandao Mountain from afar. There was some fear between her eyebrows, but there was also a faint yearning. If it wasn't for her master repeatedly reminding her not to get close to Tiandao Mountain, she might have already gone there like the others. If I didn't guess wrong, Tiandao Mountain is probably the legendary place where you can get the primordial era's inheritance, right? Lin Yi frowned slightly. Chapter 4706. I think so too, but it's because of this that it's very dangerous. Lao Ai, Huiyuti nodded and looked worriedly at Lin Yi. Although the ancient inheritance is tempting, it's definitely not a joke. Even if you're lucky enough to encounter it, according to my master, it might not be a good thing. It's very likely that you'll lose your life. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people trapped here every time. Even so, I still want to go and take a look. Lin Yi pondered for a moment and said. He wasn't someone who would be easily confused or swayed. Not only was his divine sense strong, but more importantly, his willpower was strong enough. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to hold on until he escaped from the hands of the West Mountain Old Master. This time, he was very sure that the heavenly Dao Mountain in front of him was the place he wanted to go. He didn't know why, but he had to go. This. Huiyuti looked strangely at Lin Yi and couldn't help but feel awkward. She said so much, but in the end, she still couldn't persuade Lin Yi. Although they were temporary partners, this kind of thing could only be decided by Lin Yi himself. Other than that, it was useless no matter what she said. Why don't you wait for me here? Lin Yi thought for a moment and said. This suggestion actually made him feel a little ashamed. After all, he said he would go with Huiyuti to find the Thunder Xian vine, but he had to go to the heavenly Dao Mountain halfway. Not only would it be a waste of time, the key was that he might not be able to return. This was equivalent to standing Huiyuti up. All right, I'll go with you. Huiyuti suddenly said. You're going too? How can that be? This unexpected sentence immediately gave Lin Yi a big fright. If he let her accompany him, then he might cause her to lose her life. Lin Yi couldn't afford that. Why not? You can go, but I can't. What kind of logic is that? Huiyuti rolled her eyes at him. She said so much just now not only to persuade Lin Yi, but also to persuade herself because she also had this inexplicable impulse in her heart. Now that she couldn't persuade Lin Yi, she couldn't get the Thunder Xian vine by herself. He might as well follow them to Heaven Path Mountain to take a look. Anyways, he might not die. Lin Yi was speechless. He looked deeply at Huiyuti and nodded. All right, let's go together. Be careful. Huiyuti nodded heavily. After the two of them made up their minds, they immediately changed their route and headed towards the heavenly Dao Mountain. As they got closer and closer, both Lin Yi and Huiyuti couldn't help but feel an indescribable feeling of amazement. It was fine when they were far away. Even though they knew that this was the Heavenly Path Mountain, there wasn't anything special about it from afar. But now that they were closer, the scenery was vastly different from before. This Heavenly Dao Mountain was far more dilapidated than what he had seen before. It was even in a precarious situation. If it wasn't for the side of the 10,000-year canyon's cliff, it might have already collapsed. That was not the strangest part. What was truly terrifying was that the surroundings of this Heavenly Dao Mountain were actually enveloped by a blood-red mist. He had roamed the South Continent for so long. Lin Yi had seen sea mist, miasma, and the like, but this was the first time he had seen this blood-red mist. He thought that this was an ancient battlefield, where countless powerful ancient beings were buried. Normal people would subconsciously associate this blood-red mist with blood, but there was no smell of blood here. After such a long time, it would be normal even if the smell of blood had disappeared. In fact, if there was still the smell of blood now, it would really be strange. But for some reason, this blood-red mist made Lin Yi subconsciously think of the scene he had seen before. The blood-red moon. Not to mention anything else, at least this blood-red mist that enveloped the Heavenly Dao Mountain was exactly the same as the blood-red mist that enveloped the waning moon. It was very likely that they were the same thing, but there was no way to verify it. Suppressing the bewilderment in his heart, at this moment, whether it was Lin Yi or Hui Yuti, the inexplicable impulse in their hearts was more than 100 times stronger than before. It was almost as if it was urging them to move forward without stopping. If their footsteps were slightly slower, it would heavily hammer their hearts, causing them to subconsciously speed up their footsteps. Lin Yi himself was still fine, and his mind was still as clear as before. But Hui Yuti's gaze was a little dazed. At the beginning, she was still carefully following behind Lin Yi, but now, she had impressively passed by Lin Yi and was walking forward quickly. Seeing that Hui Yuti's footsteps were getting faster and faster, and she was even gradually trotting, Lin Yi's heart was shocked, and he hurriedly wanted to catch up to her. After all, this feeling was really not right, and he was even a little regretful. If anything happened to Hui Yuti here, he would definitely not be able to absolve himself from the blame. The blood-red fog was close at hand, and Lin Yi hurriedly sped up his footsteps to catch up. But before he could pull Hui Yuti back, her figure suddenly dashed forward, and she actually used her martial arts technique with all her might. In just a moment, she had dashed into the blood-red fog. Lin Yi was stunned, and in the next moment, he had already chased after her. Then, his body suddenly trembled, and before he could clearly see the scene in front of him, a powerful torrent of consciousness had already surged over, and incomparably messy images quickly flashed through his mind. This scene was familiar, and when he first encountered the remnant of the giant electric eel's obsession, so many memory fragments suddenly surged into his mind. He did not expect to encounter such a thing again today. Especially when these countless memory fragments were combined together, the sequence of events gradually became clear, and the scene in his mind shocked Lin Yi even more. It was really the giant electric eel. Originally, he was still worried about Hui Yuti's condition, but after seeing the giant electric eel, Lin Yi's entire body suddenly froze in shock, and his entire mind involuntarily immersed in the memory fragments in his mind, unable to extricate himself. At this moment, he finally understood that the thing that had previously attracted him to this place was probably the obsession of this giant electric eel, and it had formed a resonance with the remnant obsession in his mind. Lin Yi did not know if this giant electric eel at this moment would be the same one he had encountered before, because it was almost the same size, and it was difficult to distinguish from its appearance. But at least one thing was certain: there must be a connection between him and this giant electric eel. After a moment, the huge and messy memory fragments that had merged into Lin Yi's mind finally merged into one, and accompanied by the ancient and wild aura that assaulted his face, the scene slowly unfolded. The location was still at this heavenly mountain, but looking around, all the mountains looked small, and all the places that entered his eyes were extremely familiar scenes of the desert, but there was no such thing as this 10,000-year-old canyon. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.